Okay, you guys are live on YouTube and you are being recorded.
All right, excellent. Thank you very much. I officially call this meeting to order. We are the Zoning Board of Appeals. This meeting is for the special hearing for Strawberry Fields. It is August 13th at 7:03 p.m. Held remotely. Before we go into everything, I just want to read the message that's on the top of the agenda for the meeting. We have, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, this public meeting will be held remotely with no physical meeting location. Those seeking to provide public input should do so by using the methods listed below. Video and audio of the meeting will be aired on local TV channel 9 at a later date. A live recording of the meeting will be available on the Town of Dighton YouTube channel, which can be accessed using this link, and that link is youtube.com/Town of Dighton. And the public input phone is 508-669-6431, extension 119. Leave a voicemail if necessary. And the public input email address is the letter J, GRAY at Dighton-ma.gov. And that will go to Jonathan Gray, the office manager for the Zoning Board of Appeals. Please use the subject line Strawberry Fields public input, and please include your name and address for the record. And before we go into the matters of tonight, I just wanted to take a brief moment of silence and remembrance for those struggling with or who have been affected by the COVID-19. All right, excellent, thank you. All right, good evening, everybody. We're going to go right into the updates from anyone. So first, is there anybody amongst the board, voting members or otherwise, that have any updates or input they would like to give? Greg, Logan, do you have anything for us today that you want to go into right away, or?
Not at this time. I'm going to wait for Marguerite to go over a few things. But other than that, I think we can go into the list.
Okay, Peter Williams, do you have anything?
Let's see. Yes, we did hear back from the DEP, and I think I sent a memo, email on this, that there is the requirement was confirmed for the setback of all BMP and drainage structures 100 feet from the certified vernal pools.
Okay. All right. And Jonathan Gray, do you have anything new that's come in since then that we should be informed about? Anything new?
Just the Stormwater Committee letter. Nancy and Tom are here, so they could probably speak to it. I'm not sure if, Mr. Chairman, you'd like me to read that into the record, or
if you could
just want to discuss it.
Nancy, Nancy, do you feel like you are ready to go into that letter, or do you want us to read it for you first?
You're muted, Nancy.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, I would ask Jonathan to read it, and then.
I can. Yeah, it's a little choppy, but that could be on my end.
Okay. Yeah, if Jonathan could read it, and then if anybody has questions, since Tom Ferry is here, he's my technical guy, and we'll do our best to answer any questions anyone has.
Okay. All right, I will share that right now. All right, so August 6th letter from the Stormwater Committee. Mr. Karen and board members regarding Strawberry Fields. As a follow-up to the meeting of the Stormwater Committee on July 16th, 2020, we wish to advise you of the concerns of the Stormwater Committee has regarding the following items. We iterate our position that members of the Stormwater Committee do not need an invitation to visit the site to perform inspections because of the various powers and duties that they have statutorily that pertain to the positions they hold within the town. Advanced notification is more appropriate term than invitation. New comments regarding page 2, 4A1, section 2520. The last sentence should include reference to pavement thickness, road crown, and sidewalks. These areas have historically been under the ZBA inspector. We believe the complete street standards need to be accomplished now to accommodate proper road widths and sidewalk protections. The thickness and crown of the roadways are important, but more important is what is under the pavement for a foundation. Regarding items 42, 44, and 43, 43, page 3, 4A7, we believe that allowing the construction of a roadway below the water table is both a public safety and public health hazard. We suggest the following. In areas where roadway cuts are proposed, test pits to determine groundwater levels shall be performed in the presence of at least one stormwater committee member using Massachusetts DEP soil evaluation methodology. Finished roadway grade shall be a minimum of 18 inches above the water table. Reasons for concern. Building a roadway below the water table causes heaving, potholes, cracks, water bleeding onto the roadway surface, and freezing icing. There is discoloration of the pavement, and the lifetime of the roadway is shortened. Marion Avenue and Estherbrook Avenue are examples. In addition, on Miller's Lane, the town just corrected a serious public health problem, lack of proper drainage, and public safety problem caused by water flowing over the roadway and freezing. A roadway raised above grade may cause damming of water. In addition, or in order to continue to have the surface water move without ponding, culverts or redirecting the water may be necessary. These culverts or redirection of water must be included in the design and approved by town officials. The 6-inch drain at 5 feet off the roadway puts it under the sidewalk or at the underground utilities. If it is 5 feet off the roadway, it should be an easement. Furthermore, any roadway subdrains that are not to be connected to the town's stormwater sewer system, they should drain on their own basins. These basins should comply with all standards applicable to other drainage basins in the subdivision. Anticipated outflow from these subdrain basins must be accounted for in the drainage calculations. No foundation drains shall be connected to the subdrain system or the town's stormwater sewer system. Should more detailed information be required by your board, Todd Pilling, Board of Health Stormwater Agent, and Tom Ferry, Superintendent of Streets, can provide additional information. We urge you to consider these very important concerns that will affect the town and the residents of this proposed development as they relate to public health, public safety, and the cost to correct the reconstructed roadway under the water at times or covered with ice during the winter months. Respectfully submitted, Stormwater Committee.
I believe we've lost Zachary. This is Jonathan Gale. I think we lost Zach temporarily.
Oh, all right. I'm getting Okay, so I just got a message from Mr. Chairman. He's going to call in with his cell phone, so that might take a little bit of time. Mr. Logan, right now you're acting chairman.
Actually, Jonathan, just procedurally, since we are limited to the 3 voting members, I think maybe just take a pause for a second. So
Yeah, it might be good to wait for Marguerite too at this point.
Very good points. Very good points. All right, my apologies. I forgot there was a waiting room. So Zach and Marguerite have been now allowed in.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Thanks, Jonathan. I just called you to ask you to let me in.
Do we have Zachary back? Mr. Chairman?
He is,
It
he is,
states he's here, but it doesn't show that he's speaking.
yeah. So Marguerite, we just lost Mr. Chairman. He is calling in, I believe, but he's a member right now and it doesn't appear that he's speaking. So not quite sure what the situation is.
Yeah, I agree. You need to wait until you can get him back on, since he's a voting member.
Marguerite, I suppose just for your benefit, without saying anything new, just to catch you up since you were in the waiting room there, unless you were listening on YouTube. Mr. Chairman asked for any updates from anyone on the call. And Peter Williams made a report regarding the DEP emails that you were aware of. Mr. Logan deferred his comments until you were on the phone. And then we heard the letter from the Stormwater Committee that was submitted. So that's the extent of what you missed.
Thank you, Chris.
Is there someone else in the waiting room?
That's me. I'm in. If you can hear me.
Okay.
Sorry about that. My only option is to call in. Just do my cell service. With my Wi-Fi, I can't get onto anything.
Okay, we can hear you.
Okay.
And just so you know, we stayed everything until you were back on the line. And I don't know if you can
Okay.
see, but Attorney Mitchell is on the call as well.
I cannot see, unfortunately, with the audio. It's just my cell. I can't see anything, but that's great. Does Nancy
Right.
want to pick up where? Go ahead.
Yeah, so Nancy, feel free to proceed with Stormwater Committee update.
Okay, so Zach, Jonathan read the entire letter.
Okay.
An early reference in that letter was the Complete Streets program. And I would ask Tom Ferry just to mention what that's about and why it's important, because that is something the town is involved with. It's a state program. I don't know if everybody on this call knows what that is, but Tom, could you just say a few words? Tom Ferry?
Yeah, I believe everyone's aware of it. It's been around for quite a few years. Some waivers have been considered in the past in our town, and we explored it as as a pilot program. Mainly some widths of the road considerations of being narrow and whatnot. They're not working well. So if we can still target the Complete Streets guidelines, that'd be appreciated. There was a lot to it in the stormwater letter. They hit a lot of different points. It might be seen to be out of context, but I think everyone got the gist of it, of everything that myself and Todd was trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Tom. Does anybody on this call have any questions about the Complete Streets program that is referred to? Or they're not familiar or anything at all?
I'm all set. Anybody else? Go ahead.
I'm familiar with it.
So, Mr. Chairman, if no one has questions, I don't know if anyone has questions about the rest of the letter. As Mr. Ferry said, well, we think it's self-explanatory, but we wrote it. So now if anyone has questions, we're here.
Okay, I'll turn it over to the board first, and then I'll go to the applicant. So if anyone on the board has any questions, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Greg Logan.
Yep.
At this time, I don't have any questions, but I would like the applicant to be able to answer a few things, and we might have some questions after that.
Your questions in regards to Nancy's letter?
Yes, I'd like the applicant to answer to some of Nancy's letters,
Oh,
and then
okay.
I'd like to speak after that.
Sure. So if they're ready, go for it.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is counsel for the applicant, Chris Agostino speaking. I know you can't see me on Zoom there.
Yeah.
So specifically with regard to the letter from the Stormwater Committee, actually, just I'd like to kind of pause and make one general comment. We are now over a year into this permit application process, and certainly there have been delays due to extenuating circumstances, not COVID-19 alone. There was a substantial redesign that we had proposed, and then, things that ensued from there. But obviously, even with everything that's happening, we are very far along in the process. And at this point, generally, the plan of record has been available. The last revision date was April 17th. And I think we had made comments about a push to close the hearing to additional comments and really set a time limit for people to add anything they have as far as concerns about the design or the site. Because if we don't do that at some point, we are just going to continually be receiving additional comments here and there, and then have to respond to them. And it's inconsistent with what we believe to be the spirit of the 40B process, where at this point, we're still technically supposed to be considering what are preliminary plans. Although in this project, we are now well beyond what would be considered preliminary. I know Mr. Driscoll has indicated that he believes at this point the plan is fully engineered. Now, to the extent there are any other permits that are required in terms of state permits or tweaks that are made in the detailed design process, we'll get there. But I wanted to reiterate that general sentiment regarding the preliminary nature of the 40B plans and the what is supposed to be an expedited process under Chapter 40B, in light of a letter dated August 6th now from the Stormwater Committee regarding issues that have been discussed now for months as far as concerns or general concerns about the water table. So that's my general response to receiving this type of input at this stage. But in responding in detail to these concerns, a couple things. One, we discussed at the last hearing or the last few hearings, planning board local regulations that governed issues regarding the water table relative to the design of the roadway. And the planning board regulations describe a procedure for evaluating whether or not a roadway is below groundwater, and then simply providing for drains that would allow the roadway to be built in that area, okay? The town bylaw is clear as to what it requires, all right? This being 40B, we are not subject to those local regulations. We're subject to good practices, generally accepted engineering principles. And in recognizing that, the board's engineer and the applicant's engineer got together and discussed at length how to handle and respond to concerns about where the road intercepts the water table. And in those discussions, they formulated what they felt was a generally acceptable practice for designing a roadway in areas where it intercepts water tables, okay? And that was discussed at the last hearing. So we have already crafted a condition that addresses concerns about the roadway relative to the water table. Now we receive this letter that seeks to impose a requirement that is not even stated within the local bylaw. So this is a letter that seeks for the board to impose something that is not even imposed under the town of Dayton's bylaws, which under 40B just doesn't work. So we continue to appreciate the concern regarding areas where we might be excavating and building the road through and below the level of groundwater, but that doesn't mean that it's not allowed. In fact, it is allowed. It happens all the time. This applicant and this applicant's design team propose, design, and build these types of roadways all the time. So with that in mind, we feel as though the board should rely on the extensive discussions we've had regarding these issues, the negotiated language that the board's peer review engineer and the applicant's engineer designed to address that concern, and understand that the board can't impose requirements that the town regulations don't even provide for. You can't go and create a local regulation or a local requirement that is more restrictive than what is already otherwise required. So with that in mind, to add some additional level of comfort for those that are concerned that the town is going to be stuck with some extraordinary expense down the road because of an area of the roadway that intercepts groundwater, we would like to think that the town would be satisfied with the construction of this roadway for it to be accepted as a public way. And again, that's the main roadway, not the condo area, but just the main roadway. We'd like to think that with the inspections and the review that happens, and then the final review and the as-built plans, that there would be a comfort level to say, if the applicant proposes the roadway to be accepted, they would accept it. But if there are serious concerns about the deficiency of the roadway, then it can remain private. And the applicant is going to be selling this project to end users that are ultimately going to be responsible for, and there will be financing provided for in the homeowners association and the condo trust documents that allow for expenses to be covered if there is a deficiency. But as a practical matter, we're not going to build a roadway that's not going to work. Okay. So, but if it adds some additional level of comfort, I see that in this August 6th letter, there's a lot of discussion regarding who's going to be, the town is going to be stuck with a subpar roadway. The town's going to be responsible. The answer is, if you're concerned about the roadway, when the time comes and the applicant proposes it, you don't have to accept the roadway. So that would be, a additional layer of protection. But we feel as though, this particular applicant, Stonebridge Homes, 40B is a big part of what they do, and the types of sites that 40B projects are built on always have high water tables. There's always wetlands that are at issue. And we've learned over time how to deal with those specific issues and build a project that's not going to crumble after a few years. So I sincerely hope that gives the board and the Stormwater Committee an additional level of comfort on that issue. So hopefully that's the case, and we can move forward with the language that was already proposed and at least provisionally accepted at the last hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just going to make a note. It appears Mr. Logan has dropped off the call.
Okay. I'm not sure if he's tried to text you. I don't have a text from him, but that I'm not sure if he tried to text you. I know for me, I was there for a little bit waiting to be led on. Do you see him trying to get on?
Yeah, he just texted me. He's having audio issues. I'll have him call in. So just give me a moment.
Okay.
Technical difficulties tonight.
I know. I don't know if the count has changed. I know I was talking to somebody else from a different town who was doing something similar. I guess sometimes if their account it gets too bogged down or they don't upgrade the account, it affects the service. I don't know if that's what's happening here, or because we've been pretty good with service issues until me a few meetings ago, and then again tonight with two of us.
Greg, can you hear us now?
Yep. I got you.
All right, great.
I'm sorry. I know you said a lot, Chris, and I'm watching your mouth go, and I'm like, I can't get in.
Uh-oh.
But the only thing I got up to the last one was the stormwater with the road and the culvert. I mean, the pipe going out after 5 would be in an easement. That everything you said after that would be a problem.
Chris, if you'd like, I can break down what you said pretty quickly.
Let's hear. Jonathan, why don't you give us the crib notes, and then I'll fill in if there are any blanks.
Okay, so Mr. Agostino had said we've been discussing the planning board regulations relative to the roadway and groundwater for quite a bit of time here. The bylaw is clear what it requires. We've already drafted a condition that addresses this with Peter Williams and Greg Driscoll. The complete streets items are not a part of town bylaw. The applicant's design team does roads like this all the time. The board and applicant's engineer agree on the condition, and to provide additional comfort, the town also has the opportunity to not accept the roadway if it should deem it's not up to standards at a later date when the town would decide whether to accept the roadway or not.
Can I talk now about a couple things that I heard?
Yep.
Sure.
Okay. So yeah, I do remember we talked about the fire apparatus. I know the fire department was asked. I know Tom Ferry was asked about binder. We wanted to make sure the infrastructure of the road was correct. We did have a couple areas of widths that we had to confirm with the fire department, which we did all that. The couple concerns, like if Fisher is trying to hand it over to the town of Dayton, and Mr. Ferry and Todd Pillings and Peter Driscoll and Peter Williams and Greg Driscoll have all come to an agreement on a few things, that's fine. But I'm not saying that that Fisher and all them have not tried to meet the town standards for the roads. From what I understood when we talked about the roads, the infrastructure of the road would be to the town standards. And now I'm hearing, Chris, that might not be the case.
No. That's not.
I know
that's not what I was
widths.
describing.
Widths.
No. The construction, and actually Jonathan made the comments that the complete streets standards aren't part of the bylaw. Absolutely, the road construction, the width, or I'm sorry, the depth of the binder, the underlayment, and all of that is going to be witnessed and reviewed by the town's construction monitor. Those construction standards are going to be maintained. The only thing I was referring to was areas where we are laying the road where we have to cut below groundwater, high groundwater. And that's the only issue we're talking about. And in the planning board's regulations, they have a provision that says that if you're going to cut a road into groundwater, then the board may require subdrains. Okay, so that's the town standard as it exists. It does not say thou shalt not build a road below groundwater. There's no town standard that I'm aware of that says that. And if there was, we would ask for a waiver from it because it's inconsistent with generally accepted practices that say you can build a road below high groundwater as long as you provide for certain things. So that's the only issue I'm talking about is the bylaw that talks about cutting the road through high groundwater. What the Stormwater Committee's letter said was we want to go beyond the local regulation. We think the local regulation isn't enough. We want to add a regulation essentially to say you have to build it 18 inches above high groundwater. And where that is not even a local regulation, And frankly, I don't think it's part of the complete streets, but I didn't want to be quoted on that. I think Jonathan said that I said that was not the case. I'm unfamiliar with exactly what the requirements are, but I can't imagine that the complete streets program would prohibit a town from permitting a road that is built pursuant to engineer specs that say it's okay. But all we're talking about is the few areas where we might intercept high groundwater with the road. We're going to cut into it. And we already had an agreement, or the engineers talked about how to solve that. And their conclusion was what we discussed at the prior hearings about putting in subdrains and doing some testing there. So we believe that's sufficient. The second half of what I said, and Jonathan mentioned it, is, ultimately the town doesn't have to accept the road. If the town thinks that this road is built substandard, it wasn't built correctly, they don't like the idea that it intercepts groundwater, then, the collective mindset will be, we don't want to get burdened with it because it's a bad developer and the road wasn't built properly. But we honestly don't believe that's going to be the case. So where I left off with is, rely on the language we already discussed in terms of what was the planning board requirement, and then a compromise, given that this is chapter 40B and we are not subject to the planning board requirements. So that's where I ended up. But everyone should be assured that the construction of the roadway, in all respects, as far as the types of material that's used, the compaction requirements, the thickness of the binder course, the thickness of the finish course, all of that stuff is going to be to town specs as far as construction. Be assured that's the case. And I think I can also add that this developer has built a lot of roadways. Fisher, how many miles are you up to at this point? Have you done that? Do you have that number? That's a good number. We should get you a mile marker for how many miles of road you've built. But in any event, that's another element for the board to consider. So I think also, Mr. Logan, you heard my sentiment at the outset of my comments that at some point we can't keep repeating issues, and this is an issue I felt like we've repeated at length. So we hope the board will rely on what we thought was previously decided as far as a condition to address this issue.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
I want to backtrack a little too. First of all, it was probably 1 or 2 meetings ago that I had made a remark about, by the way, where are the latest plans? And Jonathan was able to get, or had dropped a copy of the very latest plans to Health Agent Tom Pilling. I will also state that the Stormwater Committee also agrees that comments are going to end. And, when we withdrew a number of issues, I guess all of them except we were still hanging on to the stormwater permit, but we made a special request to the zoning board to allow the Stormwater Committee to comment on especially one item that was considered a planning board issue or a planning board reg. The zoning board wanted to know what the Stormwater Committee's concern was. That's why you have a letter in front of you dated August the 6th. The Stormwater Committee is not looking to perpetuate this hearing, but the Stormwater Committee asked for permission and received permission from the zoning board to weigh in on this. This information in this letter has been provided to the zoning board because when we mention certain streets, avenues, whatever in this town, the members of the board, I think most of them know where those streets are and are familiar with problems. I could have listed a few more, but I think the examples that we provided provide a picture for the zoning board members. To say that we're rehashing old things or you thought it was settled and everything else, I will reiterate, we specifically asked for permission to present some information, ask some questions, make recommendations, and make suggestions. Evidently, the zoning board felt it was important enough to allow the Stormwater Committee this one last time to specifically address these issues. We have done this in this letter. This letter is for informational purposes, and we want certainly the zoning board to take into consideration what we have said. We are not trying to override, overrule, say that planning rules, regulations don't apply or anything else. This letter is simply what the zoning board has allowed us to do. So we have now submitted, I think these are our final comments on all the issues that were of concern to us. And I thank the zoning board for allowing us to do that. And we don't intend to continue on and on and on, but certainly as a responsible committee in this town, and out of concern for the residents and the town, I thank the zoning board for allowing us to do this tonight. And I'm not here to argue. Thank you, gentlemen and lady, for allowing us to at least have one more shot at weighing in on these particular items.
Okay, thank you, Nancy.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone, Mr. Ferry, did you have any more comments before we turn back over to the board?
No, I wasn't aware that the board had worked out a lot of the details. I didn't hear any comments from Peter Williams yet either to reassure. I believe what Chris was referring to was his planning board standards. Maybe Mr. Williams can comment on that.
Tom, yes, and on all the projects, I've done a couple of the 40Bs, we've always maintained that the project has to at least meet the construction specifications of the, of the roadway, pavement width and subbase and sidewalks and stuff like that. Some variations in width, but typically all the projects are built to the rules and regs specifications, material and construction specifications.
Okay. And the comments that Todd had made referring to the 5-foot setback on that subdrain, that's new to me as far as, a road that possibly may be accepted. So I believe his comments were referring to the easement parts, for the maintenance, future maintenance and stuff. So that's been worked out also already?
Yeah, typically we just have that standard statement and basically if you come in with the situation, you do find groundwater, then obviously you make your best, you may change the 5 feet to accommodate the section of the design of the utilities within that section of the roadway. It's basically, in the field, decision.
Right, and then the possible easements will be settled before the occupancies try to.
Oh, well, yes, but I don't recall having too many roads with subdrains.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome. Anyone on the board, any more comments for Nancy and Tom? No, all set. Marguerite, do you have anything for us regarding this?
No, I just want to make sure the board feels that it's been able to hear the rationale by the Stormwater Committee and also the input from their engineer, because you're going to need to make a decision with regards to making any changes to the language that has already been reviewed on the waiver requests for these 2 particular items.
Yep.
So if there's any board members who still want any more information, these people who are here right now, this would be the time to get that so you can make that decision.
Okay, I'm all set. What about you, Greg?
Only where in the waiver or what waiver would we be looking at for the storm drain? 43, 41, things like that?
42, 44, and 43, 43.
43, 43.
I think
what did we come up? What was the word for was there any conditions on those particular waiver requests that we have done already, Marguerite?
Yes. So Peter Williams and Greg Driscoll had worked out language previously that read, it's on page 3 of the document I gave you the last meeting.
Okay.
Number 7, it read, proposed centerline grades within the right of way shall not be more than 5 feet below or above existing grade except in areas shown on the approved plans. During construction in areas where the roadway construction encounters groundwater, 6-inch side drain shall be installed 5 feet off the roadway. And then based on the question that Tom Ferry had tried to confirm with Peter Williams about whether or not easements, if that had to happen, would easements be occur? And Peter's saying, yes, that would just be a natural course of the in the field process. Am I hearing you correctly, Peter?
Well, I think if it's 5 feet off the roadway, meaning the pavement, then it's typically going to be within the right of way and easements won't be required. They would have to accommodate the utilities as it's the, you know, the under the current roadway design. And that would be the only thing. You would then have an outlet point.
And what about on the other 43, what did you say, 43, 43?
I think,
So that those two provisions were taken together by
Okay,
Peter and Greg Driscoll, and that was the language worked out for both of them together.
okay.
All right, so that being said, we have, Jonathan, do we have anything else to read into the record before we go on? I know we had that letter from Stormwater. Was there anything else that we had from anybody else?
I haven't received anything else in terms of any other town department comments or anything like that.
Correspondent. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over now to the applicant. Do you guys have any updates on anything that we haven't gone into yet that you want to go, that you would like to address?
No, I would hope that given the work that we did at the last several hearings to review the local bylaws that are implicated by this project and really get into detail as to what waivers we were seeking from local bylaws. And then from there, the conversation we had about the details of the project, that the board would be in a position to start to review tonight the proposed conditions of approval. Attorney Mitchell was kind enough to send me comments to what we had proposed back in March as far as proposed conditions of approval. And I believe she shared those with the board or asked the board to review some of that drafting that the applicant had done. And hopefully tonight we can go through some of those and determine whether or not there are any other loose ends that we need to tie off. But otherwise, given, you know, the extensive detailed work that this board put in, you know, I think we should be in a position to continue to move forward.
Okay. Marguerite, I know I was kind of, I was off, but I tried to get back on the call as you were joining. Is there any updates that you have at this time that you want to go into before we go into the edits?
So I was planning on just commenting as we went along in the meeting, but obviously I missed a little bit of the beginning of the meeting, so I wasn't sure if people were waiting to finish a conversation about something when I joined.
The only
I don't believe you were.
The only thing that was a discussion of DEP. I'm not sure we've discussed that, but that's the only thing that was mentioned by Peter at the beginning of the meeting. Or I'm sorry, Mass DEP. I could be wrong.
yes, that was.
Yeah, and I don't.
Yeah, Mass DEP.
Okay, I mean, we can certainly go into that. I mean, I don't think we really had much of a discussion on it because we were just kind of waiting for everyone to get on. Peter, do you have any? Do you want to go elaborate on that?
Well, the requirement now of impacts their design as they have it. They do have stormwater BMPs located within 100 feet of certified vernal pools on the current design plans. So right now, per the input from Tom McGuire at the DEP, the plan doesn't conform to the DEP stormwater standards.
Okay. And Attorney Augustino, would you have any comments on that?
Yes, so the board had asked us to inquire with the DEP about the question of setbacks to the certified vernal pool or pools on the site. And the question was solely with respect to the stormwater management system components. So the infiltration basins, pipes that are conveying stormwater, stormwater culverts, and what amount to stormwater management engineering details of the plan. And we continued to reach out to the DEP to get additional guidance on that, because Mr. Williams had raised the question as to, whether or not, or to what extent that 100-foot setback applied. And just to be clear, the 100-foot setback does not apply to general construction components of the project, the roadways, the buildings, retaining walls, those types of things. It references BMPs, which is the best management practices and some of the components that go along with that. And I think just in the last week or two, we received an email back from an individual at the DEP that says their current interpretation is that BMPs need to be set back 100 feet. So that, again, that's some piping, areas of the detention basins, and components that make up the stormwater management system. The legal rationale behind it is interesting from my perspective, as far as whether or not there's jurisdiction there. So what we have at this point is a letter, an email sent to the DEP following an inquiry that says that their opinion is that we need to move some of those components. And we've previously stated to this board that all of those components and the stormwater management system as a whole will be reviewed during the notice of intent process before the Conservation Commission, because that is, for purposes of this project, the state permitting agency that is going to review compliance with the Stormwater Management Act. We've confirmed, and I believe Mr. Williams and Mr. Driscoll have discussed the fact that even if we do have to move those BMPs, it's not going to require a redesign of the project as you see it before you, as far as the road layout, the layout of the buildings, and the general design and feel of the development. What it implicates is the dirt, okay? Moving the dirt or digging the dirt. It's all the technical engineering components of the stormwater management system that I refer to as in the dirt. And under the 40B process, during this hearing, we've really gotten quite granular and have gotten into the dirt to the point where we're even discussing these issues. But for purposes of this 100-foot setback, we don't necessarily agree with the interpretation. So our position is same as our position as it was before. Let's reserve this for the Conservation Commission to determine as part of the State Wetlands Protection Act process. And frankly, the applicant wants to reserve its rights in this regard, because we don't feel as though the DEP necessarily has jurisdiction outside of the extent of the Wetlands Protection Act buffer. So to regulate out to 100 feet from these certified vernal pools in this instance, there's sort of a disconnect as to the legal rationale here that we want to be able to explore during the notice of intent process. And we don't feel as though it should hold up the board's decision in this process. If the board wants to condition the project on receipt of an order of conditions, which we're required to get and which will ultimately adjudicate this issue, then the board can certainly do that. But I don't feel as though we need to take any additional action at this point in response to the email. You know, we got an email from the DEP. I don't think it requires us to take any further action on that.
Okay. And Marguerite, what's your comment? I mean, what's your stance on this too?
So, you know, the technical piece of this is engineering based. So, you know, I'm going to somewhat let Peter Williams speak to that. But from a conceptual standpoint, I guess I'm a little confused, Chris, because, you know, this issue was raised, the setback requirement was identified by Peter a while ago. The response to it was, we don't believe DEP requires that anymore, but we're going to confirm with DEP. And for whatever reason you weren't able to, Peter assisted in that process and was able to get that confirmation. They do, in fact, require this. And now all of a sudden, the response becomes, you know, well, we question whether that's appropriate and we're not going to make any revisions. Perhaps it's the case that it isn't going to actually impact the road layout, but I'm not sure that can be confirmed until we see something more. So, you know, just simply saying that is really challenging right now, given the fact that the original way that this was proposed to the board was it doesn't apply. It's not needed because DEP doesn't actually interpret it this way anymore. So I guess I'm just trying to find a way to me, this has been an open item that the board has had for a very long time on its open item to do. And we're getting close to closing those things. I think we closed one tonight with the issue of the roadway being within the ground high water table. And this would be another one that I think we need to bring to some sort of resolution. And I guess I'm just a little surprised that now that we actually have an answer from DEP, which is what we are waiting on, that there isn't some type of additional engineering work that's going to occur to provide us with some sort of assurance that this isn't going to impact the design of the project, other than simply the design of the redesign of the, you know, drainage plans for the basins. But that's, again, I will defer to the engineering aspects with Peter Williams. And I certainly, if this board is comfortable just letting this be a Concom issue, they certainly can do that if they want to. I do think it will come up at Concom, but it will probably it may result in a plan change that you're going to need to now see before you, and it won't be the plan ultimately that you're looking at right now.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just briefly comment and
Yep.
you know, thank you, Marguerite. You know, I don't think our position has changed. Our position on this issue has always been this is not a matter for adjudication at this stage. And what we hoped was we would get some guidance that would clarify it, just so the board could understand what the DEP's position is. But we never said that we were going to just agree with whatever directive came back in an email from the DEP. And that's not, I don't think that's reasonable to require regardless, because you know, you can get one official that is there and interprets it one way, and another official gets it on their desk the next day. And it's another thing, whether or not that official is, you know, the highest person in charge of it in that department. When it gets to the legal department, it could be a different conclusion. So, you know, I don't think we committed ourselves to design with whatever we got back in the email. And our position on that remains consistent. But the second half of it is, I thought, and again, I'll defer to Mr. Williams, just as you have, and Mr. Driscoll, you know, if we were concerned that this was going to require a wholesale redesign of what the board has seen to date and the level of detail we've discussed as far as the layout of the development, or frankly, anything that looked different than what this board has seen for the last 9 months, then we would suggest it's reasonable. But I believe we have a consensus. I would suggest it's reasonable to, state that we should at least do some preliminary planning for the board to see. But I believe we have a consensus, and Greg and Peter, hopefully you can weigh in on this, that it's still feasible. It's just a matter of moving some pipes outside of that 100-foot buffer, and also, regrading some of the roadway to move water in a different direction so that we can reshape some of the basins. So, our opinion is that those redesign details should take place before the Concom. And I'll defer to, Greg and Peter. Hopefully they can fill us in on some of their discussions.
From what I can see is that it's just more than, basically the restriction will basically eliminate one of the detention basins that they're proposing right now. So they'd have to accommodate that volume storage someplace else on the site. I'm not saying it can't be done, and it might be able to be done without changing any of the roadways. It's very possible, but we don't know for sure.
We've looked at it preliminarily at our office, and as Chris has suggested, we'd have to shift some high points and low points in the road to move. There's a low point right there within the 100 feet of one of the certified vernal pools, so that would get shifted over 20 feet or so. And then where basin 1A is, there's a little bit of area that'll be left over. That could be maybe a 4-bay, and then across the easement onto the rear parcel, a little corner of that, there's a space for a detention basin over there if needed. And as far as the other infrastructure, we would reroute some of the pipes for the townhouse unit to behind the units westerly, and outlet over by the area of basin 1A where it's outside the 100 feet, and regrade a portion of the entrance of Strawberry Lane to direct some more, introduce another high point to direct some water back.
So Greg, I mean,
It's not really affecting the layout of the road, grading, high points, stuff that needs to be taken care of on the profile design of the road. That's the next stage of final design.
Yeah, so I think my concern is kind of inherent in your response there, in that, there is the plan of record before the board. And the plan of record is a preliminary plan that is subject to all of these other approvals, and this board knows the process well. So at this point, we really are relying on that plan of record for the board to look at. If the board wants to craft conditions that require us to get some finding on this issue during the Concom process, and just highlight this issue, and and say the Concom shall make a determination one way or the other, or the applicant shall get a superseding order, so that we are allowed to explore this issue further before the Concom, then I would do that. My concern is, going through another iteration of what is detailed final design engineering between Peter and Greg, 16 months into the process. So that's the concern. And I think at this point, the plan of record is that April 17th plan set, and the board can subject that plan set to the requirements of final approval. And we'll be back before the board. And if, God forbid, there are changes, the board will see those before we move on.
Okay, thank you. Anyone on the board that have any comments?
Mr. Chairman, Greg Logan.
Yep.
Chris, I just wanted to go over a few things, because this has been something that's been brought up in multiple meetings, and for a few of the meetings you had said that we didn't have to require that 100-foot setback. You actually said that. That's what you were thinking. I know also Peter Williams had asked for this thing for the last few months, at least the last 2 meetings that we've had. So I understand your frustration that we're still talking about it, but this is stuff that we've asked for, and now we got some answers, and it sounds like you're not liking the answer we got. And I'm not opposed to your drawing that we have, or whatever you want to call preliminary set that you're calling it now. earlier you were saying it's almost all engineered, so it's more than that. So this is the thing I'm saying, I'm not opposed to doing a lot of the working on the waivers, but I'm concerned in some locations how we word it. So there'll be some of these that I think we need to revisit on the waivers for the conditions of the road. And for stormwater as well as for conservation. I know you have to go down and meet with conservation, and then you have to deal with the let's see, you got an NOI down there, you're gonna meet with those. It is a lot going on downstairs. But I remember talking about the conservation with this matter. I actually had Fisher and Charlie Mello sit down together on a couple of concerns with some vernal pools on other matters. But as for the road, we had talked about the no setback. Sounds like Greg Driscoll has done some homework to make it if it had to. I hear that. That's good news. I just don't want to do all this design, get all this approved, everybody's all set to go, and then you go downstairs and we're right back to square one again. I don't think it's fair to us or you.
Yeah, I actually have the very same concern. Why would we go through the detail of another design process when we might have to redesign it at the Concom anyway? So why would you've already required us to add more detail to this plan than Stonebridge Homes would otherwise pay for in the 40B process anywhere else to accommodate all sorts of requests up and down over the last 18 months regarding this site. And we've put that in only to have to redesign it. We've already, we've redesigned it. So I actually don't want to do I want to accomplish the same goal that you're trying to accomplish, which is let's not have Greg do another final design of, and again, these are all engineering issues. Okay. Let's not have him do a final design just to have to go turn it if Mr. Mello at the Concom said and Bisher reach an agreement that, hey, by the way, we're going to move X, Y, and Z. I mean, there might be other things moved. So let the process play out where we might be moving things later on. So let them make those details later on rather than go through it now and have another plan. As far as, I get the impression, Mr. Logan, that you kind of think or feel as though we might have been hiding the ball on this 100-foot issue. I mean, this is an esoteric, it's an area of administrative law as far as what the jurisdiction of the DEP is over the location of a pipe. All right. There's nothing in the interpretation that requires us to move a roadway. This is only about spacing things away from the certified vernal pool because of whether or not the DEP has jurisdiction over it. So, we were going above and beyond in trying to get that guidance from the DEP. We weren't avoiding a conclusion there. Greg had emailed several times, and I think Greg followed up, and it just so happens that, Mr. Williams followed up as well, and we finally got a response. So it wasn't like we weren't trying to get a response. I kind of got the impression that that might have been someone's feeling as well. It's just, this is an interpretation of a complex area of administrative law. And for us to just say, yeah, that's the new interpretation, which, you can move a pipe, but you have to move a pipe, but you can go ahead and build the road. Like logically, it doesn't make sense that that's the conclusion. So rather than just, accept that conclusion, we should have the right to explore that further during the DEP process and potentially even appeal it because we think it's that outlandish to require. So, number one, there was no hiding the ball here. Number two, I'm trying to accomplish the same goal as you is we don't want to fully design this several times. I don't want Greg to have to go and comply with this only to get to the DEP. And then they tell us, you know what, you're right. We don't have to do that. And then he's got to go back and do it again. So we're all trying to accomplish the same thing.
Mr. Chairman, can I speak?
Yep, go ahead. Is it Peter?
This is Bisher.
Oh, Bisher. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. This is to address Greg's comment. Greg, this is a very, Greg Logan, this is a very ambiguous, not very practiced rule. I had talked to somebody else at DEP actually several people, and they said that, oh, some people interpret it this way, some people interpret it that way, because it is so counterintuitive that you can have a sewer manhole that right in the road that's within the 100-foot of a vernal pool, but you cannot have a drainage manhole. So we would like the chance to argue that point, because it is basically just, it doesn't make any common sense whatsoever. We would like the chance to argue that point with DEP, with the yes, that is correct. That's an interpretation of one person at DEP, but there are several people, several opinions, and that interpret it differently. That it's only the outlet that's considered the outlet of a drainage area that needs to be 100 feet away, not any structure. Because if you want to go to the strictest interpretation of that rule, you can't even have a drainage pipe within 100 feet, you know. So it's a variable thing, and the point here is, even if we were to comply with it today, it's just a matter of shifting the road, a couple of structures a little bit. It's not a big deal, and it doesn't impact lot lines. It doesn't impact the buildings. It doesn't impact any of that. Just the structure, the actual structure within the road, which and maybe different gradings in the road. So we don't want to give that up yet, because we believe we can win that argument.
Yeah, and the answer is, if it does change things, then this board can say, hey, wait a second, we don't like that. So our goal is to go through that process and come back with something that looks exactly the same. You're going to look at it, you're going to say, yep, this is what we spent all that time working on, and you know, it works out how we intended. If we come back and we have to move things, then this board gets to review the movement. So, you know, this is indicative of the process. It's why we have this preliminary plan process, so that issues like this don't take time during the hearing.
Okay.
Thank you.
I do understand their point of view, though, Greg Logan, I have to say, where it's like, you know, if we don't want to have them go through this over and over again, just to if, you know, look at on our side, we wouldn't want them to spend all this work to come before us, and we're like, nope, that's not what we need either, and then they got to go back and do it again, and then we have to spend another meeting doing it too. What do you think, Craig?
Like I said, that's what I was trying to say. I just don't want to put the buggy in front of the horse here and give them all this, and that they're still not going to be able to do it. I'm not opposed to it. I know there was a lot of, we worked hard on this road. We worked hard on these prints. It's been going for a long time now. So I'm not opposed to going forward with some of the things, but I am wanting to make sure we cover all bases on the waivers when it comes to certain sections with stormwater and DEP and things like that. There's other things we can go over and hash out. We don't have to keep going over and over the road, because obviously I know they've put time in as well as we have. I just don't like to. I'm not going to be forced to go forward with something I'm not comfortable with. I do understand where he's staying. It's a matter, and Greg Driscoll gave some literature on how things could be moved, and it looks like he's already looked into this, that it could be possible without getting into some major changes. And as long as, like you said, I don't want to have to redesign this whole place all over again. I know the developer doesn't want to do that as well. So those are the concerns. So I wasn't trying to make it sound like I don't want to go forward with it. What I'm trying to say is I want to make sure that all this work that we've done since the last year, working on the design, the plan, how the house is going to sit, what's going to be accepted by the town, if it was to be accepted, what wasn't going to be accepted by the town. And after speaking with the fire departments, after all the apparatus, everything that we've done throughout this entire roadway, site views, everything. I mean, they've spent a lot of time on it, so have we. I feel very confident that that's all going to work. I'm just concerned that when they get down there, is everything that we worked on without really looking at this is going to be thrown away.
Right. So that's
Mr. Logan,
I guess
if it gives you, sorry, Mr. Chairman, I apologize.
No, you're fine. No, that's all right. That's all right. It's just hard to see.
I was just going to say, if it gives you some additional assurance, we're not asking to change all the work we did on the waivers. We can just we've already gone through all those. We've asked the board, for the waivers that we think are improving. So we're not asking for anything else. We're not asking for the board to go back and revisit its work. If we are required to make changes as a result of this issue, the town bylaws that we didn't get waivers from, they're still there. So you've done your job in reviewing those waivers, and we've done ours. There may be waivers that are implicated, but we're comfortable moving forward and dealing with it at the Concom. And if we need a waiver just as a matter of course when we come back before this board, then that's the type of thing that would come up, and it's normal through the process.
Okay, so that being said, Marguerite, now is probably a good time to start going into the edits that you guys have done, right? Would you agree?
Well, so first of all, I'd be interested to hear where Michelle sits on this. But secondly, I just want to understand, Greg, I hear that you're not looking to hold up the process in terms of like moving into the decision or talking about the decision tonight, but are you asking the developer to at least do some type of work on this so that Peter Williams can confirm that it is feasible if they need to make that adjustment? But somehow before we end up making a final vote on this, closing this matter, it doesn't have to be done tonight or by the next meeting, or are you comfortable taking a vote on this matter with this sitting as it is right now? And maybe with some language of a condition, as Chris was proposing, that would flag this for Concom.
Greg, you're muted.
I'm comfortable with going forward. I just don't want to see us do all this and then they're back in front of us again, because now we have to meet the conditions of the 100 feet, no touch zone for conservation and things like that. But I am very confident that everything we've worked on works on paper. I'm hoping it works when it gets into the DEP and things like that. But that's going to be all handled downstairs with conservation. They still have that hurdle to go through. And I understand the developer's point of view that when they get there, they're going to have to hit that hurdle then. I don't want to hold this one up. I think that they've answered a lot of our questions. I'd like to hear one more thing from Peter Williams and make sure that what I've stated and what you stated and everything else is that he has any other questions. And one of the questions you had, Marguerite, is would you like to see them reach out to DEP? I'd like to see if they get a different answer too, something come in writing back to us as well. It's just concerning because it's been asked for a few months, few meetings anyways. And now we get it and it's not what I thought it was going to be.
If I could respond to that, I think the applicant did make efforts to contact the DEP, and it's Tom McGuire in Boston is generally considered the lead expert with DEP on stormwater standards. I think there were some health issues that it made it harder for him. And I think he gets a large number of questions from a lot of different consultants, and then he has a backlog. But sometimes, and I'll have to admit that I did mention to him that I was a conservation commissioner, and he generally responds to conservation commissioners quicker than engineers, and so that's probably why I got the quick turnaround. And I think if Greg feels that the biggest change will be relocating the one detention basin. Other things, if you can get the same volume. And he says he's going to relocate the basin and then also divert some flows to some of the other basins that may have some additional storage. It's probably feasible, and if they, it's their chance to look at this. If they're feeling that they want to get a final decision on that, that would only come through the Concom process and a potential appeal of a decision to get a legal jurisdiction from the DEP on this. This is not the first case that this has been applied to. I mean, there's been other projects that had to comply with this 100-foot setback for all the drain pipes and other structures that are related to the stormwater.
Thanks, Peter.
All right, and now, Michelle, do you have anything?
No, I am in multiple agreements with flagging this for Concom because, I mean, I've been looking up the vernal pools on the Wetlands Act, and I mean, if we can just move the pipe in order to protect the vernal pool, and you know, the Conservation Committee is okay with that, I think that we can probably move forward with this as well.
Okay.
I mean, what's going to happen if they go into the Concom with this design that it is, the Concom's peer consultant will say that they don't comply with that same standard that I cited, and it will become an issue that they will definitely have to address.
Okay.
Okay, Jonathan, Gray, just wanted to double check. Do we have we had any public input since we started?
Mr. Murphy would like to speak. He's raised his hand.
Okay. Just before we do that, Marguerite, do you want to? Should I have him address whatever he needs to, or should we go into the edits first?
I assume Mr. Murphy's looking to talk to the issue that we're talking about, and just for our
Okay.
flow and I think sanity in dealing with these remote meetings, it might make more sense to get comments now. And
That's fine. I just, because I can't see anybody, I'm not sure. Yep, go ahead.
Both Mr. Murphy and Mr. Pacheco would like to make comments, so I'll just
Okay.
open the floor to Mr. Murphy.
Sure. Yep. Absolutely.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, everyone. I'll be brief. My comments are directed to this issue. You may recall I addressed the meeting a year ago when we were back in the gymnasium, and I filed at that time a pretty thick document that recounted the history of the last project that was attempted to be developed on this site, which did go to trial at DEP and resulted in a 40-page ruling that talks extensively about the vernal pools, the BMPs, and the setbacks on this exact site. And so I would caution the board to review that ruling and be guided by what the DEP has already adjudicated about these vernal pools on this site. If they're telling you that the state won't approve it under state standards, then I question why the board would approve that plan if the state won't. Thank you very much. And if you'd like, I can resubmit, if it's not part of the record, the submission I made on August 12th, 2019.
I do believe it is there in the original packet. We can have Jonathan at some point double check and then get back to it if we don't have it. Is that okay, Jonathan?
Mr. Chairman, I do have the full packet. I have
okay.
The cover letter is definitely uploaded to the public documents folder. The rest of it, there's a lot of documents to sort of maintain here, so it will get added at some point to that public documents folder if it's not already.
That's okay. I just wanted to make sure that we at least still had it.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, and is it Joe Pacheco as well with the comment?
Mr. Chairman, I should have made a statement before, but to qualify what I've got to say is that I'm not a civil engineer, but I've been a Massachusetts soil evaluator since the year 2000. And talking about the roadway and the water, high water, that should be referred to as a seasonal high water. And we all know that the seasonal high water doesn't happen every year. And it's usually around April or May. And I'd just like to add that.
Okay. All right. Anything else, guys, before we go into it?
Good, Mr. Chairman.
Yep. Oh, you're good? Okay. Anybody else? Okay, Marguerite, now is there a certain place you want us to start exactly?
So I guess, Jonathan, you have the last submission of the draft decision, correct?
From March 11th.
Hold on, I don't have that document right in front of me, so let me pull it up. But I believe that sounds right.
That is correct.
Yeah. Yeah, that's correct. Was looking at too. That was what my comments were based on.
Okay.
And Jonathan, just I can't see. Is it up on your screen?
So my suggestion would be that we actually, for tonight's purposes, wait and come back to the preliminary language and start with conditions of approval.
Okay.
Is this the correct document? This is March 11th.
Yes.
Okay. Is there a specific section, Attorney Mitchell, that you want to start with?
The conditions of approval start on page 6.
Okay.
And unless I just think at some point in time, some of the preliminary language, I know that Jonathan Gray is still working to confirm the list of documents, and the dates of the meetings, et cetera, et cetera. So I would suggest we actually address that once we've come to a full review of the conditions. And my suggestion would be, I don't know, Mr. Chairman, did you set an end time for tonight?
I did not. Before we got into the meeting is when I lost connection, so there was no end time set. No.
Okay, and you're going to want to leave time for public comment. So I don't know what you were thinking about that, but I also would suggest that before we get to the point of public comment, I know each of the board members were asked to review this decision. It might be helpful to get from each of the board members any sort of list that they might have about concepts of conditions they think might be missing from this decision, because we're going to probably see a revised version of it, I would assume, for the next meeting. Am I correct, Chris?
Yes, I started to add the waiver language that we, if you recall, at the last hearing, decided that we were going to use those rewritten local bylaws and impose them as conditions. So I started to import those, and I did start to work through the language you had, Marguerite, or you had proposed. Yes, yeah, there'll be, another iteration of this. Perhaps I can work with Jonathan if he's been working on the list of documents that were submitted and some of the history. We can maybe compile versions to pull it all together.
Yeah, or I would just even say, why don't we leave that part unchanged for right now? I think I had a couple of comments, Chris, that you can go back and forth with me on. And then a final version of that once we're ready. But in terms of, actually, you raise a good point. So in terms of the conversation that the board had about the waivers being either turned into conditions or just revised on the waiver document, I just want to make sure. I had some outreach after the meeting about that. So I just want to make sure that there isn't any desire by the board to, I guess, complete this conversation or revisit it, however we want to.
I thought that conversation was complete.
Yeah, I thought it was. I thought it was too. Mark, do we not? Jonathan, do we end up coming to any kind of formal agreement on it? I mean, a vote.
I don't think we need a vote, Mr. Chairman.
Right. No, but I guess any final definite end of discussion. I guess I should say.
I'm sorry. I guess I'm not quite sure what the question is.
So,
regarding if, go ahead.
I was just saying that after the meeting, I had some conversations about how the discussion around what we do with these waivers, where do we put the language about the revised waivers goes. And I
Okay.
wanted to make sure that the board wasn't looking to bring that up again tonight. Or
Yeah, so I'll just mention that. So I believe at the last hearing, we had discussed conditions being in, or I'm sorry, the waivers being in the actual comprehensive permit, or as a sort of separate addendum. And I guess, you know, being somewhat new on the job here, I was a little bit unfamiliar with the process and the history of what the town has done. I should sort of clarify what my preference is for the board. I had indicated last time that anytime there's a question related to a specific development the ZBA has worked on in the past, I always refer to the document, which is the conditions, the final conditions document. In some cases, I believe the waiver list and the bylaws which have been agreed to be waived or not waived, that has been a separate document, as in a separate PDF, a separate PDF file completely, that's probably somewhere near in a similar file location, but not specifically a part of the document itself. So my preference would be to have all of that, the waiver sort of files, the addendum, so to speak, the appendix or whatever it is, be a part of the same file so that it doesn't get lost in the shuffle a decade from now. I do not necessarily think it has to be a part of the file, or I'm sorry, it doesn't have to be a part of the comprehensive permit. If it's an addendum, but it's all within the same file, logistically, it's fine with me. So I just wanted to clarify for the board, that is sort of the extent of my preference. And I know that Attorney Mitchell, I mean, we had discussed this and sort of helped to clarify things for me. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll whatever format I think is going to be easier for. I mean, you got to also consider the public service, customer service aspect of it too. Whatever's going to be easier for you to find whatever you need, easier and faster for you to find whatever you need, is the way I think it should be done. I don't. How does the board feel?
I'm okay with it, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, okay with what? Just doing it in the sole PDF, Jonathan?
Well,
Logan,
Marguerite,
yes.
Marguerite, could you just clarify exactly what we're talking about here and how this would change the specifics of the comprehensive permit and the waivers being separate, but also, I guess, in the same file?
I think my understanding is that the question before the board is, what are we doing with that revised language of the waivers? The revised language around the regulations that might have been waived or waived in part. And so, you know, either they're going to be part of the exhibit document that is the waiver document, or they're going to become conditions separately within the comprehensive permit. That being said, from what I understand from Jonathan, he's saying whatever gets decided by the board, my bigger overall concern is that we have all these exhibits included as one whole PDF document that is all together. So it'll have the original decision that contains the conditions and all the exhibits attached, which will contain that waiver document as well. So that if anyone's going back to it, like myself, Jonathan, right? I can find all of this. And if I'm new at it, I will find all this, because I think Jonathan wasn't, at the time, just wasn't familiar with the setup of our prior decision.
Right.
For whatever reason, we had decided, and some of these are years old, we had decided in a few of them that we would treat the exhibit documents as separate documents and not attach them to the electronic version of the final decision. So you know, it may have been technology at the time, I don't know, but I wouldn't disagree with him. We need to have one PDF document that has everything all together. So the only reason I bring this up is I had some outreach to me about the desire to perhaps if it doesn't matter to Jonathan which way we go, perhaps we leave the practice the board has had in the past, which would be to put the language of the revised regulation right in the waiver document, rather than making separate conditions. But I'm, again, as I said to the board last week, or at the last meeting, legally, there's no difference. It's just a preference of practice to the board. So I just wanted to give the board members the opportunity to make one final sort of vote on this before this time putting changes in and then having to redo it. I don't want to do that to him. That's not fair.
Yep.
I wanted to give the board the chance to make that final decision tonight, so we knew, because he did bring it up and I wanted to just save him some work.
Yep. Okay. So I don't think I need to vote, but my personal opinion is whatever's easier for Jonathan is fine with me.
Well, Jonathan's saying either one.
Well, Mr. Chairman, this is Attorney Agostino. Can I weigh in on this?
Yeah, sure.
Jonathan, your initial reaction that it is confusing to have these rewritten waivers in an exhibit or in anywhere but the permit was correct. Your initial conclusion was correct, okay? My concern all along has been that there is a legal difference, and frankly, it's never done, that you rewrite local bylaws. We had an extension, rewrite local bylaws as waived but rewritten in a waiver list. And I've been objecting to this from the outset because this practice has evolved over time in Dayton's permits, and it really needed to end from my perspective. We had an extensive discussion regarding this at the last hearing based on your concern, which made a lot of sense, and it was done at the last hearing. Like all the board members, I thought we had a consensus, and we put it to the board for a decision. And apparently there were discussions after the hearing. For what purpose, I don't know. But the way these sections read are as conditions, and they are easier found by whoever's reading the permit by looking in the permit and understanding that you don't have to read them in conjunction with the planning board regulations or the Board of Health regulations or whatever else is rewritten. It needs to be clear in the waiver list that these sections are waived, okay? And what we decided at the last hearing after much discussion was waived subject to compliance with the requirement of the permit. So we were going to have a section in that waiver list saying the following sections of the local bylaw are waived subject to the applicant's compliance with the condition in the permit. Mr. Logan wanted that very clear, and we came to that conclusion. We spent time on it, and I thought it was, and I actually went back and I took a quick look at the video to see where we left off, and it was clear this was done. So I'm surprised we're still discussing this, and I don't know what the motivation was to have further discussions on it since it was resolved. And I would strongly suggest that your initial impression was correct, frankly, because I share the same confusion. Like, why are we rewriting these sections of the bylaw in a separate exhibit? Whether or not it's in the same PDF, they don't belong there. And I believe there is a legal difference as well. So
Yeah.
I'm going to express my frustration because I do know that this was done. So I'm surprised we're continuing to revisit it. And
So
there's
I'll-
no reason just to continue with something that was done in the past if it doesn't necessarily make sense to this board.
Sure. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll just say I understand if the board feels uncomfortable changing our policy, but I mean, I would just say, sort of from a just a sort of common sense perspective, I think I tend to agree with Mr. Agostino that although we haven't done this in the past, this seems like a more straightforward way to do it. That it seems as if Mr. Agostino could probably speak to this, that other towns probably do this exact thing where everything is a condition and there isn't a specific separate waiver list, and they're perfectly fine with that. I do think that you know, the first thing you check is the conditions, and, you know, perhaps 10 years from now, if there's, let's say, a different office manager for the ZBA, they could not necessarily understand this process as fully. And so if these waivers are, you know, as an addendum, what, you know, within the document itself, but sort of at the end of it or something, it could also get lost. Even, you know, if they're separate documents themselves, two different PDFs, they're definitely going to get, you know, jumbled up and lost. But if they're in one document itself, it's still to me is a bit confusing to have them all sort of separated and have that as just an exhibit way at the bottom of the list. So I guess to sort of put a T on my perspective here is that again, respecting what the ZBA has done in the past, it seems like that was fine. But if we were to change this policy now and just have it all as conditions, it would be perfectly fine with me. And it seems like it would make a little bit more sense logistically reading the document as well.
Okay. I mean, but that's, it honestly, it doesn't matter to me, Jonathan. So I guess say just exactly what it is that you prefer, just so we can have it clear.
So, okay. So my preference would be to have, I guess I apologize to everyone as I'm somewhat new to the whole 40B process, but my final, and I'm pretty sure final preference is to have the waivers be instead of rewriting the bylaw, have it as conditions of the approval, instead of, you know, having an exhibit at the end of the document.
Okay. And Greg or Michelle, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with Jonathan. I thought that's what we were going to be doing anyways.
I agree.
Okay, great. Okay. All right. So that being said, just to get a frame of reference here, is there anybody here that intends on having any kind of public input, Jonathan, that you know of? I'm not opening it up yet. I'm just saying, I just want to know if you know of anyone else that's here that does have anything else that they will eventually want to add.
Looks like Mr. Murphy has his hand raised, and Mr. Gale also has his hand raised. So perhaps we start with Mr. Gale.
Sure.
Okay, are we referring just to this one issue, or is this public comment in general?
What issue do you have to have?
Well, actually, I had two comments, and one is I realized back for stormwater in general terms. I wanted to ask I'm going to suggest that it's my understanding that there's supposed to be inspections. Am I right? Twice a year for the overflow. Is that right?
Yes, there's under the stormwater standards, there's actually a maintenance schedule that has to be submitted.
I'm
Part
gonna,
of the NOI, and it includes, can be quarterly inspections, you know, it depends on the complexity of the stormwater system.
I'm gonna
listed out in the stormwater, the drainage report that says what has to be done when.
Okay, I'm going to suggest, and I'm specifically that the developer during the construction process, whatever the term is, whether it's quarterly or every 6 months, that those reports be provided to the Stormwater Committee timely. And I'm suggesting that because I'm questioning whether right now, even at Stony Ridge, those inspections, which are still under the developer's venue, are being done, and if they're being done timely. I don't have any way of knowing that right now. We've asked the developer for that information, and we've gotten an elusive response. So I think in order for the Stormwater Committee to know that these are being done correctly and timely, especially since this is a long-term project, you need to establish a pattern of the information being provided to the Stormwater Committee in a timely manner.
Well, there's also another permit that needs to be applied for on a federal level, EPA permit called under NPDES, and a stormwater pollution prevention plan will have to be developed, and that will all have to be followed during construction. Whenever you disturb more than an acre of land for construction, you need to apply for one of these permits. So
I
that's all
understand.
during
I
construction.
hear what you're saying. I'm just wanting to make sure that there's some language built in here for the provision of those reports to be filed with the Stormwater Committee or whomever it would be with the town on a timely basis, however many times per year. So I'll leave that where it is for now. You can go back and visit that. My other question, my only other question for now to the developer would be for driveways. And I'm referring to single driveways for the singles or anywhere in the development where there are going to be driveways. Fisher, maybe you can answer this one. But are the driveways going to be the same width? And if there may again need to be language established, if it's a 40B unit versus another unit that's not a 40B unit, that's at full value, are those driveways going to be the same width or not? And the reason I ask that again is my concern is that the 40B units, it's less expensive to make a thinner driveway. But at the same time, if the 40B units have a thinner driveway, that's clearly defining who's in a 40B unit. And folks may not want that, by choice.
Mr. Chairman, can I answer that?
Yep.
Yes, it is. It is always the case in every subdivision that we build that the standard driveway is 12, the standard for whether market rate or affordable. The standard driveway is 12 feet wide and it opens up to 24 feet, 24 feet away from the garage. And then some people choose to upgrade to 24 all the way to the road, or some people leave it the way it is. But this is how it is in every subdivision we've done.
Okay. And if you're building some of the units, then if you're building some of the units to be sold as opposed to potentially 40Bs, as they're coming online with residents being approved, are the units that you're building separately to be sold at market rate, are those generally being built with the wider driveways?
Oh, that depends on you mean a spec house?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, that depends. Sometimes we add options, sometimes we don't. Like currently we have one that in Stony Ridge that we did not. We just had one car, and then when the people bought it after we had put it in the driveway, they added the option. And it's just like if somebody may add a jacuzzi or something. So.
Mr. Chairman, Egan, you're raising your hand as well, so feel free to.
Oh, okay.
I understand the point. I just want to speak to this because I understand the point that Jonathan's getting at. I mean, when we talk about air conditioners, right? We try to do all central air for all the units affordable or market rate. So that way you don't have AC units sticking out the side of the affordable units, things like that.
Right.
With single family homes is there is no way to guarantee we could pave all single road driveways, and the next year you could have 5 houses build a double wide driveway. So there's no way to maintain uniformity as far as driveways or exteriors of the house is concerned with a single family individually owned house. I mean, the next year somebody could put stone at the front of their facade and that would change. The difference comes, so that's where there's a difference between an air conditioner and something like a driveway or an exterior. Nobody's going to revamp their entire HVAC system down the line, but somebody can add a driveway, no question.
My only concern, Owen, is that if you're building a spec house with the wider driveway as a standard practice, and you're building the affordables without the wider driveway as a standard practice, and then saying to the person who's buying the affordable, if you want the wider driveway, it's going to cost you X amount of dollars. That's number one, a concern that I have. But secondly, if the person chooses not to, then the other folks in the development knows that that person is living in an affordable unit, whether they want to be self-acknowledged or not.
So this is where, again, to speak to your point, you're saying, hey, they know if it's an affordable or if it's not an affordable. There is a year after somebody moves in, all right, they can do whatever they'd like to their own driveway. That doesn't differentiate, hey, this is an affordable or not an affordable. Now you may be able to guess in some way that, hey, an affordable house would not have paved their driveway or not, but there's no way to control it. I mean, we can't tell somebody, no, you can never pave your driveway to a double wide driveway.
But what you can do is agree under construction to build the same wider driveway that you're building for spec houses.
But again, like if I build a model home, like not a model home, forget the spec house, everything. I sell a house, all right? That person requests a double wide driveway.
Right.
Really no effective difference between that house and a spec house during the time of construction.
I mean, I could use the term model home, but you know, I'm not a voting member here at this point. So I'm just putting it out there because it's a concern that's been brought to me. So
Mr. Chairman,
to the board.
Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Gale. It's just tough with the
That's okay.
Zoom system. Mr. Chairman, if I could just weigh in on this. I do note that Attorney Mitchell had several comments in the draft that I sent that were specific to the attributes attributable to affordable homes versus the attributes attributable to the market rate homes in terms of, you know, the number per style and the number of bedrooms. So she and I will be discussing some of that language. I know, you know, this board in the past has raised those concerns before about distinguishing between affordable and what types of features affordable units versus the market rate units have. So we'll be discussing that, and Mr. Gale can rest assured that we'll be discussing those issues. But at the end of the day, everybody should just be aware that mass housing is the ultimate arbiter on the issue of whether or not the market rate and the affordable units are indistinguishable. That is a programmatic requirement that's regulated by mass housing. So ultimately, they have the say on that. And from the developer's perspective, you know, we comply with the standards that they impose. Mass housing actually, as of January 1st, 2021, is imposing new monitoring agent requirements that may also have some implication on these types of issues. So I imagine that Attorney Mitchell and I will be discussing some of that language to make sure that the board's concerns are addressed, but also to make sure that we comply with what mass housing requires, because they have become
Chris,
more stringent in this area.
Just to be clear, Chris, you know, and I think that Owen and Bisher know what I think of the product that they produce in terms of, you know, whether there's a difference in affordable or not. And I think that they do an extremely good job, and they're very careful in general terms to not have an affordable unit look, feel, if you will, any different than any other unit. And I give them amazing kudos for that, for compared to a lot of developers out there. I'm only raising this issue because this is an issue that's been brought to me by other people who are 40B owners who don't, I don't care that somebody, if I'm a 40B owner, I'm very open about that. But there are many who come into this development and want to be considered as anyone else in the community and feel that somehow they're not, simply if but not for. And that's the only reason I raised that as a question mark. Other than that, absolutely, the developer worked extremely hard to make sure that people do not feel any different than anyone else.
Jonathan, Greg Logan, I'd like to weigh in on that. I'm looking at some of the houses that they got proposed to be in this development. Some of them are 2-car garages, some of them are one large garage with 2-car, and then some of them are single car. So you are going to have multiple widths, multiple where the mouth of the driveway gets wider at the house as well as at the end. So they're not all going to be the same because they have multiple designs of garages on these.
And Greg, I know that I realize that, I'm aware of that. My concern is simply if there is a defined difference when they're a 40B unit, based on what I've heard. Obviously, I can't see them. I can only go on what I've heard.
Okay. And if you want to get, Jonathan, was there anybody else?
Mr.
Murphy,
Murphy, if Mr. Murphy had raised his hand previously, so I just wanted to.
Okay. Yep. Go ahead, if you can hear me.
No, Mr. Chairman, I didn't know that you had to put your hand back down, so that was from earlier.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Pacheco, are you looking to provide additional public input as well?
Yeah, I have a question. I missed the last couple of meetings because of scheduling problems, but I had 2 or 3 meetings before on the waivers, on waiver 4212. Now, has that been granted? Access to adjacent property.
Do you have a question? Are you asking if it's been granted?
Yeah, has it been granted?
Jonathan, do you have?
Yeah,
any kind of rec-
I can answer that, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Information if you want, Jonathan. So that was actually granted subject to the development being constructed as shown on the final approved plans. So to the extent,
Well, there's an ancient way that goes through there, through some landlocked land. And I talked to Bishop, and Bishop, assured me, that it was going to be taken care of, but if that's been waived, though, that 4212, people won't have access to that property.
just trying to pull up the wording of 4212. So the original language. I'm not, is this the one that you're referring to? The original language says provision will be made by the applicant satisfactory to the board for the proper projection of streets.
No,
That's
it's,
to adjoining property.
no, it has to do access to adjacent property.
If any which has not yet been subdivided. In the alternative, the board may limit or prohibit the projection of streets to adjoining property where such action is in the public interest.
So what does that mean? That we have access to it?
Well, it's actually on the plans. I don't believe this ancient way is shown on the plans. Am I correct, Chris?
Sorry, say that again, Marguerite. I'm getting some wind.
Yeah. Zach, I think it's coming from you.
Oh, okay. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Chris, I'm not sure the ancient way that Joe Pacheco is referring to is shown on the plans, which would mean that, and I don't actually, I'm not sure if there was any review of this by your client. It sounds like maybe there had been a conversation between Joe and Bishop at one point in time.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether Mr. Pacheco brought it to Bishop's attention. I believe it just came up in the ordinary course during our title search, but it's a non-issue from our perspective. We're not concerned about it. It doesn't affect our design based on the location of where we understand any potential easement rights to be. Also, I believe we currently or may own the parcel that is benefited by that easement. And as a result, since it's under common ownership or will be under common ownership, there's a merger issue. So it's probably extinct anyway or extinguished. But from our perspective, it's not an issue. As far as that waiver, generally, towns in granting 40B projects do just what this board did to try to limit, future access. But again, that does not affect the easement rights. This board's action in a zoning context doesn't affect the underlying easement. And generally these issues are not, up for detailed discussion in the context of this permit or in the context of a 40B permit.
And I have one other question is about on 3600, variance 3600, earth removal. And we had a problem on building the police station where earth was removed from the site.
So that was withdrawn by the applicant, that
Okay,
request for a waiver.
okay, thank you.
All right, Jonathan Gray, was there anybody else?
I don't believe so, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so it's about 9 o'clock now. Do you guys want to start going into some of the discussion that we started before?
I think we can
Okay,
get through a
Rob.
few of these, Mr. Chairman, in, just a few minutes, and then that way it'll help guide our drafting between me and Attorney Mitchell and Jonathan as far as something to put in front of the board at the next hearing.
Yep. So, I mean, because this is more, for the attorneys to discuss, I mean, I'm not opposed to going out of order if there's any issues that you think you guys want to address first.
So I think it might be helpful to break it down into sort of substantive buckets of issues for the board to guide us on at this point. So Attorney Mitchell sent me comments, and I would imagine that her comments probably mirror what the board's concerns are. And, I think it might be helpful just to quickly point out some of these issues and then maybe get a sense of what the board's pleasure is on them, and then we can go back and Attorney Mitchell and I can discuss it if
Sure.
you want to proceed that way.
That's fine with me.
So just an easy one that came up, fences around detention basins. This is always a ZBA favorite. Detention basins are generally required to drain within 72 hours under the stormwater management regulations. I'm not certain on what the design is with respect to all the basins, and it might change where we might have a wet basin. But generally, boards are either for fences around basins because they feel as though they're death traps, versus boards that do not want fencing around basins. There was actually a scholarly article written, if you go online and just Google fences around stormwater basins, and the conclusion on the whole is it does not increase safety. So, what's this board's preference relative to fences around stormwater management basins? And then, Bisher and I have had a brief discussion on it. I don't know, if his opinions have changed, but generally the preference is not to install fences, where it doesn't significantly increase safety.
Just out of curiosity regarding that study, what reasons did they give as to why it did not increase safety? Because that would be my only. That's my only concern would be for safety.
So one of them was things to the effect that a fence is almost an attractive nuisance. If you add a fence, it might attract attention as to what the feature is and why it's fenced off. And then another one was that fences actually can inhibit rescuers from getting to someone if they're in distress. In a situation like that, I can send the link to Jonathan and he can disseminate it to the board, but it's interesting that someone took the time to actually do a study on this. Safety of detention.
Greg. Okay.
And
Greg
actually,
Logan,
you know what? I mean, I would invite you to just do your own research too, if you're concerned about.
No, absolutely. I was just curious.
I guess the question for the board is there a preference for this evening?
Well, to make it quick for me, Chris, and my thought, I'm for the fence. You know, you hit something on the head when you said, usually by the end of a storm, it's a 72-hour window before the pit actually drains out. And, you know, you could have a child go in there and fall and drown for the 72-hour sake for 3 days of water sitting there. I'm for the fence. That's my personal reference.
Greg, what have we, how does the board usually
We've always had fencing around these basins. We had a developer that had one up on Elm Street, and we pretty much had to use like the bond for him to get the fence up because it wasn't being maintained properly with the fencing and stuff. So the fence had to go around it.
Okay. Michelle, what's your opinion on this?
I'm actually not for a fence, because
Okay.
in regards to being around some new builds with my other job, I've seen where you have wildlife that is in there, like turtles and things like that, that come out. Deer use it sometimes. And I also just find that it attracts kids to want to go on the other side.
Right, and that's kind of what Attorney Augustino was saying. Yeah.
It's like a flashing light, like they want, oh, what's over there? And I think it's going to cause, if it's not there, it's not going to be really any big deal, I don't think. I mean, that is my opinion about the fence. I mean, if someone has another one, just they can.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just ask a general question, and that would be
Sure.
a two-part question. Would just out of curiosity, is there a gate, and is that gate accessible and openable by members of the public? And then number two, is the drainage basin like a grassy surface that could potentially be used as open space by someone if they wanted to play soccer or something? Is that something that typically could happen, or is it sort of a gravel basin or something?
Yeah, so usually there is an opening in the fence because you have to maintain and cut grass and clear out leaves in the fall. So there is an opening, and it actually brings up a good point, is that the fencing also kind of, in some cases, inhibits the ability to maintain the detention basin where it collects leaves and builds up debris. But in some instances, and I don't know where Greg's going to end up in the final design, I feel like we have slopes that aren't conducive to recreation. But, you know, generally they're not an area that you would play in. They are grass lined. But, you know, children don't, it's not someplace that you could play soccer because of the grading and the other features that are in there for water quality and those sorts of things.
And just for the record, even when, you know, during the 72 hours till they drain, the maximum depth is probably a foot maximum, if that. So it's not really, but we're like, I am used to putting them in Dayton because that's a requirement. But I'll leave it up to the board, the wish of the board to what they want us to do.
Marguerite and Peter Williams, well, how do you feel?
I think unless there's some strong evidence not to put a fence up, we should put a fence up. I'll take a look at that article that they are talking about and see if the philosophy on them has changes. I can do that before, you know, between now and the next meeting.
I wouldn't mind that, just because, no pun intended, I'm on the fence about it. I mean, I've heard very valid arguments so far either way. So if you don't mind doing that, and then Attorney Mitchell, how do you feel?
So I mean, this is not really, I've seen towns do it both ways. So I think it's personal to the board. So all I can say is that, yes, I agree with Greg. This has been, and Bishar, this has been the typical requirement of the zoning board in the past. But I've heard the arguments that Michelle raises and Chris raises. I don't know that I've actually read all he references, but I've heard those arguments too in other communities.
So with the
put in a fence.
Mr. Chairman, Mrs. Goulart would like to speak on this as well.
Okay, go ahead, Nancy.
Nancy, unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Before the Stormwater Committee was formed and before we had split off the Board of Health from the Board of Selectmen, there was a development proposed up on Richmond Hill on Hart Street. And because of the slope of the land and everything you know about Richmond Hill, Pudding Stone Estates it was proposed as. Chairman of Board of Health at the time was Tom Pyers, and we actually made tours with engineers to look at various types of drainage basins, infiltration, which is what we prefer, detention and retention. And we went to Middleborough and Lakeville and even within the town of Dayton. What we found was, depending upon, and this has been referred to by several of the people that have spoken, depending upon the total depth and the slope of the basin, literally, some of the ones we saw weren't basins, they were pits. And I mean, we were amazed that we saw them fenced and we saw them unfenced within walking distance of homes with children. And we were appalled that that particular community didn't require literally a pit to be fenced and have a gate with a lock that could be opened by public safety, if you know what I mean. And in Dayton, and when we were talking about this type of design, there's one on Jennifer Lane right near Route 138. There's no fence. It has, I'll call them gently sloped sides. It gets mowed regularly. Water doesn't stay there any length of time because we haven't had much rain, but even so. So it's really going to depend on the actual design. And all I'm saying to the board is, within this proposed development, there's probably going to be samples of each of those. And I would certainly say if it is deep and is more of a pit, as Mr. Logan mentioned, as opposed to a true basin with a flat bottom and gently sloping sides, if it's a pit, it should be fenced with a gate and a lock that can be accessed by public safety. The other thing I will mention, up on Richmond Hill, off of Elm Street, there is another development. We have both one that is fenced because it's more pit-like. We have another one that more closely resembles a miniature football field with sides and a flat bottom. The problem we've had up there is kids get up there with like motorbikes or ATVs and ride in that area and tear it all up, which damages and affects the way in which water is absorbed into the ground and dispersed. So it really will depend on how big they are, but we don't want to turn them into playgrounds or places where kids can take motorbikes and tear them up. These are just things you need to keep in mind. And these things actually exist in the town of Dayton now.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, great, thank you. Yep. So that being said, for me to make my final decision, I guess I would want Peter Williams to take a look at that article or any further research he needs to do and see how he feels after looking at any more material.
Can I ask a question? Would it be okay if instead of having to install a fence, there is just like aprovites around it? Would that, like on the smaller ones? I didn't.
So
when I'm thinking of a retention basin, I wasn't thinking of a pit. I was thinking of a retention basin.
But you guys gotta realize that this entire area is mainly wetland. All around it, we're talking about vernal pools, we're talking about high water tables. I really think this needs to have fencing. That's my opinion, and that's what I'm gonna say with that.
This is Jonathan. I don't know if anyone can hear me. I'm just going to make a very quick comment. I did have my hand raised, but I had messed up on my computer, so it may not have been seen. I'm just going to say Bisher is right. In the town of Dayton, the developments that they've done before and with his firm, they have fenced off. We have the areas in Stony Ridge here and next door as well in the Pines fenced off. And I will tell you, I think that every single resident who has young children feels much safer and much more secure because they're fenced off at this point. The grass is also... The grass in those areas is not maintained the way you would maintain your lawn. The grass is allowed to grow higher before it has to be cut, and even not cut down necessarily to the same level. So you know, if you don't have a fence, you're going to have high grass potentially. And if children aren't aware of what they're doing when they're chasing a ball potentially, or going in that area, or they're young kids, even going through that high grass potentially, if it's not mowed properly or kept up, for example, they could fall into it and so forth. So,
Mr.
I
Chairman,
think
can I
for
have the last word on this for tonight?
Yep.
Since we're
Yep.
probably not going to make a decision on it, it will be some research.
Yep.
My statement would be the thought that fences increase safety might be based on fears of sort of just terrible things happening, and more based on fear than actual studies and evidence. And I think people have actually taken the time to do studies. And I sent the board a link to some of those studies and some of the findings. And I think, you know, having done those studies, you know, it doesn't necessarily increase safety, and in some instances can actually cause dangerous situations and become an attractive nuisance. So although it might bring with it the appearance of safety or the feeling of safety, it might not actually, as a matter of practice, increase safety. But as we've indicated, we'll leave it for the board to decide. But I think, you know, there are studies out there showing that although it might seem nice and feel like we're doing a good thing, we might actually be causing more harm than good.
Okay. And then is there another matter you want us to draw our attention to for this evening?
It actually, I think it'd be worth spending a few minutes on, because it appeared several areas in Attorney Mitchell's draft. The issue of the level of detail required as far as which units of which type are going to be affordable versus market rate. Marguerite had proposed some language, and without you know, getting into the details of the language, you know, generally from the developer's perspective, mass housing ultimately governs the allocation of units and the allocation of bedrooms across affordable versus market rate units. And I thought we had actually agreed at one point that, you know, certain of the cottage units were going to be 2-bedroom, and that we were going to allocate, I think we indicated that 25% of those would be affordable versus market rate. I want to get a sense of to what level the board is comfortable, you know, allowing mass housing to do its job in that regard, and monitor the number of bedrooms within units, and give the applicant some flexibility to build what the market demands versus a clear list of exactly which units are going to be in which design with how many bedrooms and which ones are going to be affordable.
Sure. My gut reaction is, you know, to me, you know, let, you know, mass housing do its job. But I mean, I don't know, Greg, Logan, is it typical for the board to pick out which ones are which? It's like exactly which ones are which, I should say.
I just want to make sure I understand the question, because it's not as how many affordables are throughout the development. We've already hashed that out, right, Chris? The
Correct, yes.
Question at hand is if Fisher had someone that wanted all the cottages to be affordable, for example, they'd all be in that section, if that's what it turned out to be, or are we still staying to a percentage per each style of cottages, townhouses, houses? Those are all going to stay the same size, same amount of affordables per those sections. However, I do remember something, if I'm not misunderstanding you, about, I thought there was no decision of what type of house. It was gone on the houses that were designed. I think we picked out 4 or 5. I have them right here in front of me. Houses, I believe all the houses any of those homes could be an affordable. Am I correct on that? That's what we were discussing earlier, that if a petitioner should come to a potential buyer to Fisher and they wanted a Belmont or whatever it was going to be, he could offer that as an affordable. Doesn't tell him he can't offer it as an affordable. I didn't think we had like affordables are only 3-style houses out of all of them. I thought all the houses could be
I-
affordables.
Gregor,
Yeah.
that we've done in the past, in both in the Pine and Stony Ridge, is every time we build 3 houses of certain style, regardless what it is, we build one affordable to kind of mix it up. Now, it just so happened that in that rule is not 100% solid, because sometimes just to get ahead, like we built all the affordables in Stony and delivered them, but that's based on certain assumptions. But generally, this is what we follow. We follow, whatever sell. It's difficult for me to commit to what the general market rate units are going to, what people are going to buy, what models. But what
But you're offering every house that we have, that you have in this pamphlet that we got from Delphi, the comprehensive application, the ones that we approved, all these homes are
offered,
can be picked for as an affordable. We
Correct.
also discussed that we're not going to build 3 of them side by side like that. You might have to get
Exactly.
a particular lot, move it around.
Exactly.
So am I correct in the question? Did I answer your question?
Yeah, and you indicated, and I'll confirm, that we are allocating a proportional number of affordable units across the single family, the cottages, and the townhouses. And Marguerite actually enumerated.
This hasn't changed from the last time, right? That's been in the
Yes.
original.
Yeah, that's-
how many
that
are going to
table's-
be in each one. All right.
Yes. Marguerite's note, and Marguerite, maybe you can weigh in on this as to, what you think the decision for the board to make might be, but you wanted the board to review the language and compare it to the other permits, just regarding the style of units that are eligible for affordable units. And I think Bisher's saying that they're all eligible to be affordable units. It's just a question of how hard and fast is that rule required to be?
Chris, which comment are you looking at? Just so I make sure I'm looking at the same page you are.
Page 9, condition 6, comment MM9.
Comment MM9, that my version says that's about green.
It's no, in my version, it's
That had to do with the interior finishes?
no, but I think that's the same concept that we're discussing. It was on page 6.
I thought you were looking at the language I had inserted between 13 and 14. Condition numbers 13 and 14.
Yes, yeah, so it's that one, and then I have it as MM9 above, on page 9. It's condition number 6 under housing standards, but you're right, it's all the same question.
Okay, well, the condition 6 refers to things that are sort of interior and exterior style modifications. So that's a little different. Let me start with.
Well, sorry, I might be looking at.
Yeah,
I don't
let me
know if mine changed.
start in
but-
language just to guide the board, and then.
Okay.
And then maybe we can work through this. So.
Yep.
So essentially what Bishop was saying right now is every time I would build 3 houses of one style, I would build an affordable unit in that style. That type of language is something that the board has asked developers to do. Some developers haven't been comfortable committing to that, but they've been willing to commit to a certain percentage of each house style being affordable units because they wanted the market to drive it a little bit more, or a minimum of X number of affordable units being of each house style. So if Bisher is comfortable doing that, and this is what the board wants, then I would say just write up the condition to reflect something like that. That's what this language was intended to do. This board has talked in the past that if you've got 4 different house styles or 5 different house styles that are proposed, we want, all those house styles to be built. We don't want to have you driving into development and seeing essentially cookie cutter homes, or all of a sudden in one area you get all these homes, but everywhere else you don't have them. So they just wanted some assurances. They wanted language. You've put language in prior decisions that have assured that there will be a variety of homes within the development. And then within that variety, there's a proportionate number of the affordable units built across the board. And that type of language wasn't anywhere in what Chris had written, but Chris, what I sent to you doesn't have to be the final way the board looks at it. It can be, it's the concept that you're talking about that we could work out language on. And then the last piece to that language I had is that with the cottage style homes, because they all are the same style, the only difference is whether there's 1 or 2 bedroom units. So I had indicated that you would want to include a requirement that the proportionate number of the 1 and 2 bedroom units constructed for market rate homes, a proportionate number is also provided for affordable units. You don't want all the affordable units. And I don't think they necessarily can do this per se, but I think that this board has always liked to have that language in there so they know there will be an equal, 25% of the 2 bedroom units, there will be that 25% in the affordable units.
Well, is the board opposed to normally what we do for the affordable units, because the lottery tends to favor families with children? Normally, we put more bedrooms in affordable units, like more either 3 or 4 bedrooms. And by the way, the cottages are not. There is no cottages with 1 bedroom. They're all either 2 or 3. It's the bedroom.
okay.
The bedrooms, the 1 bedroom, the 2. Actually, we don't have any units with 1 bedroom. In the townhouses, we have 2 bedrooms. We don't have any units that have 1 bedroom.
Marguerite's laughing, Bishop, because I think
I think we need to look at that, Chris, to make sure.
no, I saw several of your notes, Marguerite, where, let's confirm the housing styles. I think the last, yeah, I mean, we'll obviously confirm that, but yes, it's 2 and 3, and I thought we had discussed it.
Okay, I don't think I see it that way, but again, maybe it's just because we need to confirm. So, but
I want
Bishop,
to follow up with Bishop made a comment.
is if your point, Bishop, is that for the affordable units, you'll always give more bedrooms.
Yes, that's my point.
I don't think this board would have any issue with that. I think they were more concerned. Some developers have looked to try to provide fewer bedrooms in the affordable.
Oh, I see. The concern is that we do all the market rate, 3 bedrooms, let's say, and the affordable is 2 bedrooms. Is that what the concern?
Right.
Yeah, no, yeah. It's definitely going to be at least proportional to, like 3 bedroom units. Market rate will at least, the affordables will at least match the 3-bed ratio of 3 bedroom units, but it'd probably be more.
Okay, so if the language in the condition said that you just had to make it proportionate,
That's no problem.
I
go
think we're
beyond
good.
it, that should work, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I think we're good there. Okay, so that's
That's
good.
fine. Yeah, that's fine with me too. I don't at all feel the need to tell these go into actual specifics with that. As long as it's proportional, that's all it matters to me. I don't know how the board feels, but
Marguerite, do you want to talk about the interior amenities, interior finishes?
So Chris, if you want to revise that section based on this conversation, feel free.
I'll revise that section, but the interior finish section,
Talk about 13 or number 6.
right.
So this board in the past has had language that they've used with regards to exterior style modifications. And wanting some type of proportionality around that. So I'm just trying to pull up from a different decision. Give me a moment. So usually things like, roof lines, decks, additions of garages, etc. If the board has in the past required that if those types of exterior style modifications are occurring for market rate units, that a proportionate number would be given to affordable units.
No problem.
Okay.
Okay.
Maybe that resolves that then, Chris.
Well, because,
Yeah, I was gonna
because
make-
it's,
yeah,
I mean,
that-
it is very much to our concern and advantage to make sure that the site, the site looks good. So if we modify a roof line on one, the only thing that I will object to is if somebody, if a market rate house buys a bigger deck, that, you know, we have standards, whether general standards, whether it's market rate or affordable, and the options that are offered to both market rate and affordable. They're welcome to buy any options they want to, but I cannot control if somebody, you know, like Jonathan Gale was saying, if 5 people bought a double wide driveway, I cannot force proportionate number of affordables to buy that, you know. But as far as roof lines and colors and styles, I do make sure that they are proportionate.
Okay, I think I'll go through that language with Bishop, Marguerite.
Okay.
I'm still having trouble drawing everyone's attention to this section 6, comment 9 in my version. I don't know why it's different. I might have made a change that moved everything around. But Bishop, it's the bathroom issue for the number of bathrooms in affordable units versus market rate units.
Right.
Interior finishes.
Right.
We had language that says, you know, the affordable units may have fewer bathrooms and interior finishes, amenities, and layout of the affordable unit shall otherwise comply with the requirements of mass housing. And Marguerite had a note on there saying she was going to use language from another decision. And I know you encountered this on Stony Ridge. And again, from our perspective, it's a mass housing programmatic requirement. You know, Bishop, where do you stand with that?
In every single town that we've been in, the interior is as long as the exterior is, you cannot differentiate between a market rate and affordable. That's the rule. Interiors are a different story. Like I have a subdivision where we have standard solar panels. Mass Housing said, since this is standard, you cannot put solar panels on houses on market rate. Then people will know immediately that the ones that don't have solar panels are affordable, which is no good. So we put solar panels on all of them. But
Bishop, we lost you there. You must be sitting on your microphone.
even in those houses, can you hear me?
Yep, hear you now.
Even in those houses, the interior, they said you're free to do whatever you want. That's how.
Could I
No,
just
we-
ask, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Miss Lima.
I just have a question. So in regards to the lots for the single family homes, if somebody comes to you and they want a lot and they're a market value, is that like, are the lots for sale before the build, or
No.
are these not going up until they're all built?
We don't sell a lot in 40B. It's really difficult because of the issue of profitability limitation, limited dividend company.
Okay.
We cannot really. I'm not sure. I've never encountered that.
Okay, so somebody can't come and say, I want this lot for a market value house because it's already going to be there before you put them on the market?
We don't sell lots, but we do get market rate people saying, I want this lot. But if that lot was designated as approved now by Mass Housing as an affordable lot, it cannot be sold but to an affordable lot.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to clarify.
Yep. Fisher, this is Jonathan. I just have a quick question. Over in Stony Ridge, and I think in the Pines too, but I'm not sure about the Pines, the affordable units have the same numbers of bathrooms as the full value units. Could you explain to me why you're choosing not to do that over at Strawberry Fields?
Because I inherited both subdivisions, the Pines and Stony. I didn't get them approved. I inherited them with that decision in place. which I thought it was not inappropriate.
Okay, that's a fair answer. Thank you. I was just wondering where that was going and why.
Commissioner, it's Greg Logan. Hey, I've got a couple things on the interiors of the houses. I've worked on a couple 40Bs with Joe Pacheco and Mr. Karen. And a few things the only thing that we would allow on the interior to be different, whether or not it could be a half bath. If there was 2 bath, it had to be 2 bath, was the countertops, going from granite to not granite. Those are the only things that we were allowing. Again, we already talked about the air conditioner on the outside, central air, that you said you're gonna do that to them all anyways. But I just wanted to let you know, in the past, if an affordable has, if a market value is a 2 bath, 2 full bath, we required the affordable to have the full 2 bath as well in the past.
No, I understand.
I'm just saying what we've done in the last few that we've had. And I think the only thing that we did was like some of it could have been like the flooring, the tile could have been a little different. And I don't know if it was all tile, and I believe it was the countertops.
Our position is this is really a mass housing decision, but of course you can condition anything you want.
Would you accept that condition, Bisher? Or do we have to talk about that?
Let's talk about it.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I think there were 2 others. I think we had a good discussion on that, and it advises Marguerite and I as to what we need to do. Maybe we could just hit 2 more and we'll see how it goes. One of them was excavation below groundwater for basements. And the other was the extent of tree cutting for the single family lots. Both of those Marguerite had commented on. So the first one on basements, it's section 17. And we thought we had a discussion. So Mr. Logan's concern was that we were going to have sump pumps that were dumping water down the driveway, out into the driveway, out in the street, and it was freezing and people would slip on it.
Just like your mother's house, you were saying.
Yeah, well, exactly. You got it, exactly. So we proposed some language that we were going to, if we did do dewatering, any measures would ensure that it's subject to the board's approval of the construction monitor and peer review consultant to ensure that dewatering does not result in the flow of groundwater over land. So basically, we weren't going to dump it on the driveway or anywhere over land. We were going to manage it, through the stormwater system or otherwise. I can maybe let Greg speak to the details on that, but there's no building code limitation that would prevent us from putting a basement below the water table, as long as the building code requirements are met. And some of Attorney Mitchell's revised language essentially prohibited us from having any basement that intercepted groundwater. Maybe we could just have a quick discussion on this, Marguerite.
Yeah, actually, I'm gonna start by letting Peter comment on it, because he did take a look at the draft decision with my changes on it, and he does have some comments to that one. So I'm gonna start with Peter's commenting on this, if that helps.
Actually, I'm not sure about that one, Margaret. I really didn't look at that one. I think that's more of a building code issue, and I haven't really, not much experience with that, or, I could check up with it, but the local building inspector would be the best,
I'm sorry, Peter. I was trying to pull up your revisions. So I think I was just trying to reflect what I understood have been the conversation at the zoning board meeting, that you were not going to be constructing any basements that were below the seasonal high groundwater table.
Yeah.
All basements would be above the seasonal high groundwater table. So
Remember that comment.
Well, my recollection was that, and we had the discussion about the sub pumps dumping water, was that, if we did do it, it would be done in accordance with good engineering practices. It's not prohibited. It's just we have to do it in such a way that, we're not making a mess. So, we'd want to be allowed to do that if we did encounter it. As long as we're not dumping water and it's freezing and that sort of thing. I mean, Greg, Bisher, Owen might, is Owen still on with us? He's having a late night.
Yeah, he's here.
Owen, I mean, you've probably had a lot of experience with this. Have you encountered that? Could you speak to how we might handle it?
Yeah, so I mean, we do all of our foundations with a French drain built in, regardless of where we do it. And so we've designed this system because it works. It works regardless of the conditions that we put it in. Obviously, our biggest importance is building a system that'll last. Massachusetts has warranties in place. We actually now have some long-term guarantees for all of our foundations as far as structural and water goes, because we're so confident in the systems that we build.
Hey, Ian, can I ask you a couple questions?
Sure.
Going from a building point of view, when you dig below grade and you're down in the water table, how's your soil sample below when you're trying to build a base to put a foundation on? I understand you're saying that you're gonna guarantee your walls, but now you pour your walls and then you go and put your French drain system in, and then you go and put your floor, which now you have a cold seam around the perimeter. What stops the water from coming up through the floor when you have a hydraulic pressure?
All right, so there's two things involved there. The first is when we dig down, so like typically in Stony Ridge, for example, all right, while the foundations may be built above the water table, when we strip off all the loam material, we may be down below the water table, all right, initially. When that's done, any material we need to replace below the foundation is all done, with crushed stone to provide adequate drainage and provide proper compaction. So all of that's done. Foundation is put into place, then the French drain system. So the French drain system that we use, which is a pretty accepted practice, all right, is all the area underneath the concrete floor is crushed stone. And then around the perimeter of the foundation, there's a pipe, and then there's a bucket in one corner with a sump pump attached, all right? Any water, not even like pressure, like water pressure building up, but any water that makes it into that crushed stone that isn't being directed outwards, through the natural tendencies of the water, goes to that bucket because it's the easiest place for it to go. If you think about the amount of pressure that's required for water to push its way through a crack in the concrete, well, now we're saying, hey, there's an empty bucket here, an empty perforated pipe to travel to. Any sign that water is even close to the bottom of the foundation shows up in that bucket first.
So where do you displace that water is what I'm getting. That was my next conversation.
Yeah, so
we're not putting it outside so it runs down driveways and runs into people's properties and off the property. Where are we displacing that?
So that depends on every lot independently. So in this case, typically it's fed to the back of, behind the house. It all depends on the grading and sloping, and we don't want water, running down somebody's driveway or front lawn or adding to the stormwater system either. So we look at every lot individually.
And if this was the case and we ran into this particular basement below groundwater, we'd make sure that it would have a swale and it would protect your abutters' properties as well as your, I guess all the abutters of properties, and not go out onto the street or the stormwater, correct?
Absolutely. So whenever we do, again, I'll take Stony Ridge for an example. We have a lot of lots in which we've built up because the septic system needs to be above the water table. In between every lot over there, if you look, there's a swale running down in between the houses. So that way, when you talk about water coming from one neighbor to another neighbor, it never runs from one neighbor's house to the other neighbor's house. It always either stays contained on its own property or along the property line.
So now that's what I'm getting at. So now we have a street at the front, and then at the back, unless there's another swale running the opposite way, or it's the abutters. In this particular case, we are a little upland when it comes over to the street, the next street over. I can't even think of the name of it. I apologize. So that I'm concerned of where the water swale is going to run that water into the abutters that are back there now.
Oh, you're talking about the abutters. Not, I understand the abutting property next door, not
Yes,
necessarily
yeah,
a neighbor on the site.
yeah,
So again, we take that typically when we review each lot, we take that into mind. So we know, hey, there's a neighbor back there. We want to keep the water off their property as well.
right.
So we establish swales like that.
Okay.
Greg, we rarely have a basement in the water table. I mean, rarely.
I know, and I understand that, Bishop, but this particular development is really in a low water table area. Most of this is. Some of it's upland, some of it's going to be fine, but there is some areas that I feel you're going to fall into a situation. Not much, but you're going to have a few, and I think that's one of my concerns. It's been a concern of mine. I think I brought that up a while back at a meeting, and I just didn't know how to actually put it all in. Is because when you're not going to run it into the street from a sub pump point of view with a backflow preventer, it has to go somewhere.
Right.
And I just don't know how you're going to control where the water goes, and when you have those situations.
Right.
But yeah, no, I understand. You're not everywhere you're going to have that.
Okay, so hopefully we can get some flexibility there, and we'll run the final language past Peter Williams. And I think with the construction monitor and the agreement that, you know, we'll make sure we know where the water is going, we should be okay. Let's do one more and then see if, Mr. Chairman, you know, we want to call it a night, or I think actually it's getting a little late. So maybe the last one, and it should be pretty quick. We had some language regarding the amount of cutting on the site for construction purposes. So, you know, generally when we go in to build single family homes, unless there are specimen trees that are clearly worth preserving, you know, the construction requires that the site be cleared. And there was some language that I had proposed regarding, you know, trying to minimize clear cutting with respect to the single family homes only, which generally means that, you know, again, if there's a specimen tree, we'll identify it and take care of it. But the language Attorney Mitchell came back with was more restrictive as far as how we cut and prepare the site for construction. And it was a little more restrictive than what's necessary to allow us to build the project, and it could run into problems. So the condition is condition
7.
Thank you, Marguerite. 20, actually. I'm at.
Oh, 20. Sure.
And, you know, I think, Jonathan, do you have that up in front of you? Because I already made some revisions in this one. I want to make sure, if you wouldn't mind reading that.
I didn't make any edits to 20, Chris. I only made edits to 27. I actually noticed that these seem to be,
Oh, it is 27. They're kind of the same too. You're right. Yeah.
that we
So,
should combine them.
so Jonathan, maybe if you read 27, and then we can have a quick discussion. Or show it. Yep. Thank you.
All right, there shall be no clear cutting within the single-family portion of the development. Cutting shall be minimized to the maximum extent feasible and kept to that necessary for construction of the road and other required improvements within the single-family portion of the development. Individual lots shall be cleared only to the extent necessary for construction of the dwelling unit. Any cutting shall only occur immediately prior to the commencement of construction of the phase for which the cutting is needed.
So that language was actually what we proposed, and, you know, the prohibition on clear cutting is just essentially to protect specimen trees. But when I discussed it with Bisher, you know, he's very familiar with the site, and, you know, in walking the site with the engineers and his team, there's really nothing worth preserving out there as far as a specimen tree or anything worth it. And frankly, you know, to build a single family house, you need 40-foot clearance, you know, at least all around the house to get equipment in, build the foundation, prep the site. So we don't want to wind up in a position where someone accuses us of clear cutting. And I think Marguerite's proposed revision was even more restrictive. And then, Bisher's indicated that it's not something we had planned to do. So we're asking for flexibility there. And, hopefully the board can give us that flexibility.
So maybe it would help if I explained the language I had put in.
Sure.
So I had kept the first sentence, there shall be no clear cutting within the single family portion of the development. And then the language I used was similar to language the board has used with other developments. Each of the single family homes in the areas for the townhouses and each of the cottage style homes shall be cleared of vegetation only to the extent necessary for construction of the dwelling units, driveways, parking lots, and yard area. I suggested that you delete everything else except for the last sentence, which would say any cutting shall only occur immediately prior to the commencement of construction of the phase for which a cutting is needed. So their language had said, cutting to be minimized to the maximum extent feasible. It was a little more generous than the board has been comfortable with in the past. I think this board has always really taken a look at the need to preserve vegetation as much as it can. But again, I'm just, again, looking at the historical, in this case, historical conversations I've heard this board have about limiting cutting as much as it possibly can.
Okay. So Greg, you've had more experience with it than I have in the past for other 40Bs. What's your thoughts on it?
Excuse me, Chairman, if I may, I think that if you look at the plans, the grading for the roadways and the houses and everything basically call for, grading and cutting and excavation across almost the entirety of the site.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be,
Yeah, I was just gonna say, exactly. Mostly looking at the drawing, the way the whole thing is laid out, very minute areas that would be able to be salvaged. But I do know we have the tree warden on right now, Tom Ferry. Not sure if he probably don't know of anything out on there, but I wasn't sure if he knew of any kind of specialty tree that might be growing out in that area that we don't know about.
Is he still on?
Yeah, no, I'm not aware of any special tree or congestion of pines or whatnot.
Okay.
And if I may,
Thank you.
as somebody who's out there doing test pits and trying to get through there, it's not nice woods. It's not nice vegetation out there. It's rough going when the machine's out there trying to clear paths and get going to where they need to go. So.
Okay.
Okay.
Greg, how do you feel?
I'm okay with the language that Marguerite put in there, but I'd want them to understand. I think the language might have to be addressed a little bit because unlike some developments, there is some nice trees, upland. This particular piece of property, like they were saying when you walk out there, the way it's designed, there isn't much left that wouldn't have to be treated clear cut. But I would like to see without the 40-foot around the road areas and anything that they don't have to cut. Obviously near the vernal pools, no touchstone areas, things like that. Try to keep as much as that upgrowth we can in those areas.
Yeah, and we do have provision for undisturbed buffer, as we've discussed in some areas. So I think let me work with Marguerite on that language. But I think to Peter's point, since we will be grading a lot of the site, grading is going to require quote unquote clear cutting. So, we will end up doing a lot of that. So I'll work with Marguerite on that.
Okay. All right. So that being, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, Mr. Chairman, back to you.
Oh, yeah.
So, Mr. Chairman, we should probably set the next meeting date, and then we have a little bit of business after this. So we probably want to wrap things up pretty soon.
Absolutely. Yep. Okay. So what kind of time frame do the attorneys think that they need for any more discussion for planning out the next meeting. And also, obviously, it's going to depend on what cable has available. So just keep that in mind too.
I think we're looking at after Labor Day, definitely.
Yeah, and I would say at some point in time, I think it would be helpful to find out from the board members if there's any missing conditions, things that they didn't see in this decision that they want to make sure are a part of it.
Okay.
And that might help me better understand, you know, is it going to be, Chris, if you and I need to exchange this at least once, then I think to be fair to each of our schedules in the end of the summer, we're probably looking at the end, like maybe the week of the 21st or the 25th, 8th of September.
Yeah, the week of the 21st caught my eye, Marguerite, and I do think if, you know, I don't think there's anything wrong with the board members emailing the ZBA secretary or Marguerite saying, hey, what about this or what about that, to assist us.
Yeah.
That's
then,
fine.
You know, Attorney Mitchell and I can try to do our best to capture, you know, 18 months worth of deliberation and evidence and see if we can't get this in front of the board in good shape. So I think, Bisher, does that make sense, the week of the 21st?
Sure, it does.
Sense for us to try to aim to have it before the board on the submitted to the board on the week of the 21st. And then
Go ahead.
Well, actually, Marguerite, I was thinking hearing the week of the 21st, and you know, if you and I can, you know, get something for the board to review the week after Labor Day, you know, that would give them plenty of time before the week of the 21st, assuming they've already given us some comments or given you some comments before then.
yeah, I'm just knowing how this end of the summer is going and the fact that I'm thinking that to be realistic, something to the board the week of the 21st would probably work better for me, and then holding the hearing the following week.
I'm just putting up there the town meeting calendar so that people are aware. We have the September 23rd would normally be our ZBA meeting, but because the Board of Selectmen moved their meeting date, the 23rd is off the table. It looks like the 22nd would be available. The following week is the 5th week of the month, so there's no meetings the 28th to the 30th. There's no meeting on the 24th. Obviously, this is sort of as subject to some boards and committees might not add their meetings, but for the most part, this is a pretty good representation of what the other boards and committees have.
Okay. What days will work best for everyone on the board? Or is there any objection?
24th works for me.
And that the 24th, I'm sorry, I still have the
Yep. So 24th is a Thursday.
Hey, John,
Okay.
it's Laura at Cable. I just want to let you guys know, Board of Selectmen is meeting in person at Old Town Hall for all of their meetings going forward. So if you guys did still meet on that Wednesday and you're meeting via Zoom, we can still record your meeting and go live on YouTube.
There's no conflict.
Yeah, so again,
oh, okay.
I don't know, I don't know how fast Chris and I are, where we're gonna be with all of this, but I can't guarantee to the board that if I need to respond to something Chris gives to me the week of Labor Day, that I'll be able to do it the following.
Oh,
I
I'll
would
have it.
just on the 28th,
Okay.
that week, because I'm just trying to be realistic with everything that's going on in other areas of commitments that I have.
So you want to schedule it for the 28th, Monday the 28th?
I think she was saying the week of the 28th. So
I'm sorry.
So I think if Chris and I aim to get this to the board by the week of the 21st, so either the 21st or the 22nd, that will give you each a week, a full week to review everything.
That's fine for me. My work schedule is not done that far out, so I'm open. It doesn't matter to me what day.
So might I suggest the the 30th then, because if we have general business for the Zoning Board of Appeals, we can keep our regular meeting date of the 23rd and then have a full week before our next meeting, which would be Strawberry Fields.
Fine.
That's fine.
That works for me.
So if someone can make the motion for me to continue the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, this is Michelle Lima. I am making a motion to move the public hearing for Strawberry Fields to Wednesday, September 30th, 7 p.m.
Is there a second?
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman. Greg Logan.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. So we're all set. There's nothing else for Strawberry Fields in for tonight. Is that correct?
I don't believe so. Chris?
We're gonna get together though, all the board members, voting members, or any questions or concerns on all that and try to get it over to Jonathan so these guys can work on that though, right?
Yeah, just you
Yeah,
individually, you can send
Yeah,
your.
one at a time.
Right,
Yep.
yep.
Yeah, you can't get together.
You're using the term. get
You know what I
together.
mean? No, I'm saying the
No,
board needs
I
to get together, you know,
Yep.
get
Oh,
it
yeah.
into them. Yep,
Yeah, everything routed through me is preferred.
yep.
Sure. Yep, absolutely. All right. So those attending the meeting this evening for Strawberry Fields, you are all set. Board members, just stay on. We're going to go into whatever last minute stuff we have.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Zach, are you all set with me or do you need me to stay on?
Nope. I mean, Jonathan, you didn't have anything unrelated to Strawberry Fields for Marguerite, did you?
Marguerite, there was a discussion at our last regular meeting. There was a applicant who was proposed to do a retreat lot. I'm sorry. Yeah, it was a planning board sort of type of retreat lot where there was an existing house lot. And so they could not do a retreat lot with our zoning bylaw. And the board got a lot of input from the public. It was basically asking if they could impose a condition on a variant to create a variance to create an additional lot, whether they would be able to have that condition be enforceable. Do you have any sort of input on whether that would be a matter that they could have as enforceable?
Might I just remind any board member on the case, do not discuss this case. We're not discussing anything. It's just purely just to ask Marguerite this input. Okay, guys?
I guess
Go
I'm
ahead.
not exactly sure I understand without it. I'm a visual person. I guess.
Yeah, sorry. I can send you an email if that might be easier, but
I don't mind giving you a call to talk about it if you want to send it to me and.
yeah.
Marguerite, this is Jonathan Gale. I think the general question, without saying where, what, when, is that because of this particular type of lot, there is one current home on the lot, and then they want to build this second home on part of the lot, as similar to what Jonathan was just saying. But the condition would be in such a way so that no further building could ever take place in that entire, between what the two lots currently will exist, no future development would ever be allowed.
So it would be a deed restriction.
A deed restriction so that no
that the
future
ZBA would
residents would build.
impose that they
Can
could
we do that?
I guess I'd have to, I'll keep that in mind when I talk to Jonathan Gray. I guess I'd have to know a little bit more detail about it.
Okay.
I'll send you a write-up in the map. I've just been,
No, that's fine. I mean,
that's the only thing that we had sort of outstanding on from our regular meeting.
Okay.
And then we just had to discuss ZBA general scheduling matters, and then there was one meeting minutes to approve. So we're looking like we're actually good in terms of September meeting date for ZBA, because the cable team just told us we're good to go on that. First, our regular meeting date in September, which I believe was September 23rd. So we're good to go, and that'll be our regular meeting date for September, will be the 23rd. And then if the board has had a chance to review the minutes that I submitted yesterday for one of the meetings we had.
Yep, I did. I think they're all set, guys, unless you guys picked up on anything that needs to be fixed.
No, I reviewed them also, and there's no changes.
I concur.
All righty. We're all good? All right, so do I hear a motion to approve the meeting minutes?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion, we approve the minutes, meeting minutes.
From February 12th.
Oh.
I knew they were long ago. Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the minutes from February 12th, 2020.
And that was the general information session, not the the Strawberry Field meeting.
Correct.
Right. Yep. Any, do I hear a second?
Jonathan Gallo seconded.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All righty. So anything else, guys? Anything else
Yes, I
unrelated?
do. I have one thing. I want to go over something, nothing related with the zoning, but it's the month of October. I will not be around from the 23rd to the 30th. So whatever we do for meetings, let's keep that dates. That I won't be around for the Strawberry Fields. If we can do it before, I'm fine with that.
What was that?
Okay.
again?
October 23rd
Okay.
through the 30th, Friday to Friday.
Oh, okay.
So Jonathan, Jonathan Gray, if you have any kind of if you have any sort of method that you use to keep track of any kind of things dates ahead of time, people tell you yes or no to. If you want to just make sure we note that, just to remind ourselves.
He has it up right now, Zach. And the 28th, we have a regular ZBA meeting. I will not be attending.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, so,
That's a regular meeting, but I just want to make sure that we have the dates from that Friday to Friday, 23rd to the 3rd, that if we're going to do a Strawberry Fields thing, we do it before that week.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I do keep track. If there's any members that let me know that they are not able to make a meeting, I just keep that a mental note. So if there's another member that reaches out and says, oh, I can't make that date, then it's sort of a red flag at that point. But if there's only one member that has an issue with the date, I don't see a problem.
Okay.
Do you want me?
All right.
Keep,
Jonathan Gray, I'm going away in December if I'm allowed to.
Yes, you are allowed to.
So I'm going to email you those dates because it's quite a few.
Yeah, if any member has a specific date, that they are not going to be in town, just let me know and I'll keep track.
Now, let me get another question. The ZBA that we have on the 28th for the zoning, is that we have anything going out that far yet? Because could we put it the week before?
No.
Seeing how the selectmen are now going to be meeting?
Right now,
You're talking about.
Right now, Greg, the only thing we have before us is the continued case from the 29th meeting. So
Yeah, I'm just stating if we're thinking we're gonna run into a situation, we could move it up to the 21st. Now that the selectmen meeting,
Right.
We could if we had to.
Yeah.
well, did you vote to continue it to a date certain?
yes,
I think we did, Marguerite, yes.
we moved at the beginning of the meeting. We voted to continue
that, right?
the case to the
26th.
August 24th.
Yeah, and I'm in October though.
Oh,
Wait, no.
Yeah, Greg
Voted
was
it
just saying.
December 23rd.
Because
Right.
what's up right now is that's October 20th, right, 2020. Now, if you go to August down there, we have those meetings are not an issue. I can meet those. It's the October one is what I was getting at, that we have it written down that, I don't know what month you're on now. Okay, you're not, can you go to October?
Yeah.
So in our last meeting, did we already say we were gonna meet on that date? I want to say we did, but I don't know why I didn't pick up on it.
No.
We're meeting on the 23rd of September for the continuance on the Elm Street, the retreat lot.
Okay, because I know what it was, the month I had it wrong. I'm looking at October now. We're good.
Yeah.
Okay.
We planned
We're good.
October 28th for our.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
That's all right. Hey.
Michelle,
You're on vacation mode.
Yes, I'm looking for it.
the continued meeting from July 29th, our regular meeting, that continued meeting we set as August 24th. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we had August 24th, and then we voted on everything except for the Elm Street retreat. So we continued that because then it's either attorney or their builder. I can't remember what he was, but he sent us the revised plan.
Yep.
And so we're supposed to revisit that again on the 23rd.
24th.
24th of August is what I had.
Oh,
You put
Yeah,
up
me too.
August on here?
yes, I'm sorry, yes, 24th of August.
Yep.
24th of August, yes, and then we have September 23rd planned, October 28th. Yeah, I have them all down, and then the next one was November 18th.
Right. And right now, I don't think we have anything unless Jonathan has something
Right.
for the 23rd or the 28th.
Right. I just passed August.
Yeah,
'cause-
the only case we have right now is the continued case for August 24th.
24th, yes, at 7 PM, yes.
And Marguerite, just so you know, I don't think we expect you to be at the 24th meeting. I think we just need to sort of get your take on a specific condition that we want to have. So I'll be reaching out to you on that.
That sounds good. I won't come, and I don't typically plan to come unless you specifically request my attendance, so.
Yep.
I know, Marguerite, it was funny when we had our first regular meeting with Jonathan Gray. He was like, "Oh, so about Marguerite going," and he was like, "Oh, we're saying how it's not really a custom that she goes to all of them. She just always has been because they've all been 40B meetings."
Yeah.
That's okay. I go through spurts where I see you guys all the time and then I don't see you for a while, so.
I know. All right, guys. Is there anything else anyone here needs to discuss?
Nope, this is Jonathan Gale. I guess hearing no comments, I will make a motion that we adjourn.
Is there a second?
Delima second.
There you go. Wow.
Any discussion?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, guys.
See you
Good night.
guys.
Thank
Be
you,
safe.
Cable. Cable, we're all set. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.